Good morning, Grand Rising. Welcome to Wake Up with Sonia Poulton. And guess it is exactly 9 a.m. GMT. And I am delighted to be here with you. Why is this coming back at me? It always does this. Whoa, hello. It does. There we go. Hello. Oh, this is so weird. Why is this coming back? I'm going to, oh my God. Hello all. I have no idea why I'm hearing myself many times over. Good morning, Soul Sound and Crazy Bunny. I hope you are very, very well. This is so weird. I don't want to be coming back at myself like this at all today. At all. I've just worked out what it is. I had another page open. Forgive me, for I know not what I do. Grand risings to you all. Good morning, Denise and Mimi and Marie and Randy and Crazy Bunny and Mickey and Ginger Ninja and Jacquelyn and Rita. Listening in on Monday morning is my new thing. Top of the morning to you, Rita. Top of the morning. Good morning, Jenny from the block and Paul and Merv. Good morning to you all. Merv, I feel perky. Oh, yes, I do. We have a great show lined up for you because you know that is my goal. Absolutely. Morning all. It's election week, says Carly. It is indeed. Carly, it is indeed. Craig Campbell, you are such a pick-me, aren't you? No shout out for me. I see how it is. God love him. Good morning, you all. John from Coventry says, I'm being encouraged to drink by a fellow truth seeker here. Oh, kind of like that. Monday Gremlin, Sonia, says Marshka. Yeah, the gremlins are called Sonia. I had another page open without even realizing it. But it is lovely to be here with you, you beautiful, glorious people. Thank you for joining me. And you know how we have to start it. Marcuson, is Marcuson in the house? Because we have a remix of a remix. Let's do this.
You can't handle the truth. Good
morning, beautiful people. We are live.
Good morning, Grand Risings. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton, Sonia Poulton, Sonia Poulton, Sonia.
There you go. Let's get this up and running, eh? Hello from Tenerife, the Dyson brothers. Marcuson is in the house. Thank you for our remix of a remix, Marcuson. We really appreciate that. Tune, says Kaz. Oh, no need to shout, Soul Sound. Apparently, says Reba. Maria loves it. And so does Marlena. And so does, sounds like Art Garfunkel, says Shug. Shug is taking the pee, I do believe. Oh, no, actually, no, he might be right, actually. He might not be taking the pee. Anyway, what have we got coming up for you today, right? Now I've got myself into gear. Let's do this. Very shortly, I'm going to be joined by the musicians Whom by Fire, who were put in the unenviable position of that cancel culture, facing down the Antifa fascists. I think it's so hilarious how Antifa consider themselves anti-fascist when they are the ultimate in fascists these days. Oh, yes, they are. And at 9:30 a.m., I'm going to be joined by journalist Charlotte Gill. She's my kind of journalist. She's a troublemaker in all the right kind of ways. And she's going to be telling us how charities promote open borders with your money. Oh, you better believe it. And at 10 a.m., I'm going to be joined by statistician Nigel Jacquelyn. And yes, there are more issues with the Lucy Letby conviction. The question is, when is too many enough? I think we've already gone past that, have we not? And the CPS are considering whether or not to charge Russell Brand. Kemi Badenoch is the new leader for the Conservative Party to replace Rishi Sunak. But isn't it just a straight WEF handover? Feels like it to me. And royal hypocrites. You know who I'm talking about. Oh, yes. William and Charles, in particular, William on this occasion, claiming to be a homelessness campaigner. Oh, God, doesn't it make our hearts sing? Except he is, in fact, a slum landlord. Oh, yes, he is. I'm sure you're not that surprised. And tomorrow, it all kicks off in the race for the White House. Who are you? Where are you? Who are you backing? Trump versus Harris or none of them? And where is Levi Davis? Disappeared 2 years ago and still not found. And what about Sadiq Khan and his dodgy underground ads? Oh, yes, there are many, but two in particular. And did anybody see about the 5G mast in flames? Don't say we didn't tell you. Please don't say we didn't tell you. And I'm going to recall that time that I met Sean Puff Daddy Combs. And the reason that I am, I've talked about it before, but the reason I am is because our mod, Zoe, has answered a 2-decade-old mystery for me. And I'm so excited. Soul Sound, there is so much going on. And can I just thank my darling mods in the house, Soul Sound and Crazy Bunny. Yes, I love them very much. And what about clickbait internet gossips? You know, the ones I mean. Some people, they are on the internet not for raising awareness or, you know, issues of integrity, but simply to get your clicks, and they will say whatever the hell they want to do it. And I will ask at the end, are you a HSP? A highly sensitive person? I bet you we have more than our fair share of highly sensitive people in the live stream right now. Markson says, feels like it's going to be a big week this week. It's going to be a big week this week. Randy. Oh, yes, it is. Randy, who do you love? I love you too, Crazy Bunny. I love you very, very much. And all the usual good stuff, of course. Viewer emails, live chat. And you know what? We do news differently around here because someone had to. Oh, yes. And thank you once again, all of you, for being here. Teresa, you are indeed a HSP for sure. And so are you, Healing the Silence. Robert, good morning to you, Robert. I think I saw an email from you in the inbox. Please forgive me, everybody. Slightly behind with my emails again. Not such a surprise to anybody, but I will catch up this week. Oh, yes, I will. And I just want to say hello, thank you, and welcome to oldies and newbies alike. Thank you for every single contribution you make to our show, whether that is your emails or guest suggestions or liking, sharing, subscribing, or contributing to my Patreon or buying me a coffee, whatever it is, whatever your contribution, I greatly appreciate it. And Pink Diamond hates clickbait. So do I. I hate really misleading titles when people are like, you know, I can't even think about it because I don't do clickbait. I'm not interested. Robert, I am still healing. You can hear it, right? My throat. But it's getting there. Oh, yes, it's getting there. So we're all right. We're okay. What's that? Best show ever, says Randy. I love you, Randy. You are gorgeous and glorious. Tell you what, kids, why don't we just bring in our first guest, right? A little bit ahead of time, but they're already here. So why waste a second? I say, let's bring them in. And here they are. Ah, lovely to see them. It's Dan and Eliza from Whom by Fire. A brilliant name for a band, actually. What the hell does it mean?
Yeah. It's from one of our musical heroes, Leonard Cohen. One of his songs is Who by Fire.
Ah, got you. Got you. Well, welcome to the show, both of you. Lovely to see you both. Thank you for joining us. Now, you encountered one of those things that I really, really hate. And in fact, it was lovely Lucinda Lidston who'd said to me, you'd contacted Lucinda, and Lucinda said to me, is this one for you? I said, damn right it is. Because she told me what you had encountered. And then I saw it all over social media as well. Shout out to GB Resistance. And I saw it all over social media. And let me just see if I can play this. I meant to play this video before you came in. And I'm not sure if I can play the video while you're on. If I can't, I will play it after you finish talking. But let me give it a shot. Let's see if I can.
Pardon? It's time for all the fascists. Nasty stuff on your Twitter, don't you? Yeah, you got. Pardon? You got some nasty stuff on your Twitter, don't you? Gentlemen, I think it's best to start filming. Doesn't matter. Excuse me. You need to move on. Okay, don't assault me. Don't assault me. Don't assault me. Okay, guys, please share this as far and wide as can. Take your racism somewhere else and no, take your bigotry away. We don't want fascists here going and trying to bully us. No, you are the fascists here. I don't want people coming up and assaulting people. This is disgusting. Go away, you fascists. Go away, you fascists. Mate, please move out of my personal space. This is disgusting, mate. No, you're not coming in here and assaulting me. Mate. Wait. No, don't assault me. Do not assault me. Mate, you're going to move out of my personal space, please. Mate, do not assault me. Move out of my personal space. Mate, you're going to move out of my personal space, please. Trust me, you don't want to... No, I don't want anything to do with you fascist thugs.
Listen to that threat. Trust me, you don't. And it's like, what you're going to do to him exactly. And the thing is, big up to GB Resistance GB, whichever way you put it. But big up to you, and well done, Will, for facing off with those people. And I met Will the other week, and I believe that Will is mixed race, and I think they were calling him racist, if I got that correct. Absolute madness. Tell us what happened. They're such thugs, and they're cowardly thugs, right? They always wear masks. Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Take it away for us. What happened? It was Thursday night, wasn't it?
It was Thursday night, and we were originally due to be performing at the Night Owl in Finsbury Park. Based on threats made to the venue, the Night Owl cancelled our event and put out quite a derogatory statement about the sort of people that they considered us to be. We also had Jeremy Corbyn, who called us far right and said we don't need to be bringing racism to Finsbury Park. So based on that, we were offered a new venue called Edibles London, who were absolutely amazing. But unfortunately, Antifa showed up and attempted to stop us from supporting Edibles London and putting on our event. And so we went to the Night Owl to redirect people to the new venue. And then shortly afterwards, around 20 masked thugs showed up and were assaulting us, threatening us, and trying to stop any guests like entering the new venue as well.
I mean, the thing is that I've listened to your stuff. You don't strike me as racist or fascist. Why were they saying that? Any idea? I mean, I know they don't make sense a lot of the time, but any idea at all? Because they said to Will, didn't they? You've got some, I think it was, you've got some nasty stuff on your Twitter feed, right? So basically, they're probably objecting to all the kind of woke stuff that people like you and I are sick and tired of, right? That's I think that's the gig, isn't it? So Jeremy Corbyn got himself involved, which is a bit unfortunate, really. I mean, please.
Well, the other thing is, Sonia, Jeremy Corbyn's brother was actually at the event, and
it comes to quite a few of them, isn't it?
And here's Corbyn is he's a socialist, so it's just ridiculous. So I think Jeremy Corbyn is he's basically inciting violence and hatred on us.
Yes.
I wonder if he'll be getting 3 years in prison for that. I doubt it.
Well, it's a really good point. What is a Night Owl, other than being really derogatory towards you? What did they actually give you a legitimate reason for this cancellation?
No, they just use generic terms like far right, and things that today don't normally actually mean anything.
I mean, it is quite shocking. Did you have any indication that this was going to happen?
No. Well, I didn't. We've played there a few times. This night has happened before there, so it's not a new. It's not a new thing. So no, I didn't really.
Yeah, I mean, as far as we can tell, it was literally people like Jeremy Corbyn and a couple of other journalists put out a message and circulated that there was a far right meeting taking place, and that resulted in masked thugs turning up and assaulting us.
This is our viewers are really disappointed with Jeremy Corbyn. I'm going to read you. Be Happy said, how disappointing from Jeremy Corbyn. Piers is a great man. Yes, Piers is. I've had my own clashes with Jeremy Corbyn because Jeremy refuses to believe, for the most part, that men cannot morph into women, which is an odd idea, obviously. So, as you said, Resistance GB and Free Seed Films, they did an amazing job of securing a new venue, because these things are really hard. I know what it's like, right? I've been on the receiving end of cancel culture, and it actually, when you first realise what's happening, it's quite wounding, isn't it? It's quite an impact. I mean, it really kind of impacts my heart, the idea that, I should do something that people think deserves to be cancelled. How does it make you feel?
Yeah, exactly that. We want to play our music, like you said earlier. If you actually took a little bit of time to just listen to our music, come to one of our shows, you'd see there was no hate. It's all love. We're not inciting any kind of violence in how we are as musicians. So yeah, it is a blow to the heart, really.
Do you feel, because it's been suggested here in the comments, good morning to you, Paul, do you feel that there are bigger organisations in the background pulling the strings, perhaps for want of a better idea, a hope not hate kind of thing, or a centre for countering digital hate? Or do you just think that those, because they appeared to be all males, right?
Yeah.
Were there any female? So, or do you think that those males were all just there off their own bat?
Well, we did discuss this actually, and it seemed very organised.
Yeah.
So we can't prove that it was there was a larger organisation behind it, but it did have that feeling that it was something, not just a natural thing.
Right. And I think that is a feeling that lots of people are getting right now. It feels like there are invisible hands behind the scenes pulling the strings, right?
Yeah.
Katie, the event that they were at was originally at the Night Owl in Finsbury Park, North London. And these two lovely people were there actually to play their new single. And this is what they encountered, this absolute nonsense. But you can see how it happens once a big name like Jeremy Corbyn decides that this is a problem, and they just they actually are the ones whipping up hate. That's the irony, is like the hate that those males had towards Wills was just awful. And that threat, that was an absolute threat at the end that guy was making. And the thing is, we can kind of see you guys, even though you're absolute pussies behind those masks, we can kind of see you, right?
Yeah.
So that in itself is really, really cowardice. But how has it left you feeling about the venue?
Well, I understand why the venue made their decision to pull the event. They were being threatened. I think what their statement that they put out was wrong and incorrect.
Yeah.
So I think they need to, at the least, retract that.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. What was the most egregious for you that was said?
Well, I think just, it's just like mainly like generic things like calling us a far right group.
It's the labelling.
Yeah.
It's so lazy to just label, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how can you recover from that in some respects? Because now some people will have seen this whole idea that you are racist, that you are fascist, and that they've tarred and feathered you. That's defamation, actually, what they've done to you.
Yeah.
So how are you? I'm not suggesting that you start going on a lawsuit binge or anything, because those things are absolutely hideous and tedious unless you really need to do them. But how do you intend to counter that for people who don't know you?
Well, we're not going to be intimidated, for one thing, and we will carry on.
Yeah.
And it just gives us more passion to put our music out there.
Yeah, definitely.
But it is challenging. I mean, these people are, they've said that they're going to come after all of our gigs now. And it's not safe. We don't feel very safe, but we will continue.
Yeah.
This, I think, is something that will resonate with many people. Healing the Silence says it almost feels like they want love and freedom to no longer exist. Music brings people together, but it seems like the times we are living in, music is no longer something to celebrate. I mean, and that is the reality as musicians, right? And as musicians who are part of the freedom movement, this must feel like a double blow in many respects, because I was a music journalist for many years. So I love music. I mean, you know what they say, and that is if you can't do it, you write about it or you teach it. Well, I couldn't play music, but I loved it. Come from a musical family. I love music and I understand the power of it in, promoting messages, for one example. And you have very strong messages, but you weave these strong social messages in with something that's really quite fantastic, a fairy tale element to it, right? Talk to us about your music. What inspires your music? And tell us about your new single. Let's plug it.
Yes, let's go.
So our music, it varies, but we like to, some people say it's quite dark, but it has an element of redemption in it as well. and our new single is called "The Truth Hurts," and I think it'll be quite self-evident when people hear the song what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Everybody's asking to hear it. I am so sorry, everybody. I have not queued it up, but here's what I will do. If I can get it on before the end of the show, I will. If not, I promise you, I will play it on Friday when I will get it queued up. I promise you that. So what can any of us learn about this? Because we need to unite against this, don't we?
Yeah. I think people need to, if you're not doing anything wrong, then be brave and use your voice and don't be afraid to say no to things when something's clearly wrong.
I think George hits the nail on the head here. It's a case of sticks and stones for the left and jail for the right when expressing points of view. I mean, that is the reality. You are now on the sharp end of what we've seen since July in this country, right? The silencing of people, everybody being deemed far right. I was deemed far right the other week. You can't get any more left than where I come from. I literally come from a left working class stronghold, right? That is where my background, right? And I'm actually apolitical these days. I don't trust any of them, but everybody is far right apparently, right? And when everybody's far right, then nobody's far right, which is ridiculous because there is actually a far right that exists. So how do you, because I'm very concerned that you, as you're upcoming artists dealing with this, and already you've been labeled as something that you're not.
It's disgusting. It's quite the opposite of what we are. That's what the irony of it all is. There's no truth in any of it.
Yeah.
Is there any point talking to these people? It doesn't seem like it, of course, because they arrive mob-handed. They have their face covered, so immediately they're in a very aggressive stance anyway. But go on.
To start with, when we were first there, for the first hour or so, we were actually having some pretty decent conversations with other people that had obviously turned up to try and cancel the event, but they didn't realise that we were there as the musicians and as part of the Resistance GB. Right. So we were just talking away about, all this kind of stuff, and it was actually really interesting. We had good conversations.
Yeah.
And then the mob turned up.
Yeah.
And that's when it switched.
We actually so there were two different factions of protesters. There was some masked ones and just some people who wanted to stop our event who didn't really know anything about it. Who weren't violent, but we actually there was a fellow there with
Charles,
called Charles, I believe.
He was a sweet one.
And he was wearing a pride hat, and I think he was protesting about something to do with that. But anyway, he ended up coming to our event afterwards. So I think that's a really
real positive thing.
Actually, so you converted one of the protesters.
Orlando talked to him for a good 20-30 minutes and was amazing. And they had this great conversation. And he just bundled along with us, and we got the tube together and got to the new venue. Yeah. And he was there for the whole night.
You know what? Nothing bad happened to him there.
Nothing bad happened.
He was perfectly fine.
I mean, that's the reality, isn't it? What did the police have to say? Because they arrived eventually, didn't they?
They did arrive. They just took down some statements, didn't they?
Yeah, they took some statements, and it was quite funny because as soon as they arrived, the gang just ran. So it was. So I think they may have had weapons on them as well. So, but the gang then showed up at the new venue as well and tried the same thing. But
but the gig went ahead.
Yeah,
and you had a good time, didn't you?
Yeah. And honestly, Edible London, the food bank that put on the event, were just like our angels. They really did come and save the day. And all the volunteers working there, just incredible. Incredible work. Yeah.
Sometimes you have to see the kind of darkness of people in order to be able to really appreciate the light, right? And that is often the way, isn't it? But big up Resistance GB, Free Seed Films, and Edible London Food Bank. Thank you for doing the right thing. We are not going to be able to progress at all in this world if masked thugs show up and demand that everybody be silenced. That is no way forward at all. give us a parting shot. What would you like people to know? We will put a link to your new single in the description at the end of the stream, and we will make sure people, please download it. It's downloadable, is it?
Yeah,
It's
on
downloadable.
Bandcamp. Yeah.
Excellent. That's what we need to hear. Give us a parting shot. What do you want people to know?
I think it's a time to be brave and to speak your truth. And the more of us that do that, the easier it will be for the few people that are doing that. So
definitely.
Exactly. We have to stand the ground now, don't we? Because if the fact is too much has already been given away. In fact, our next guest will tell us exactly how many millions is being spent on this, what she calls woke waste. And so we have to say, no, this is it. No more. End of it. And I think you did a blooming good job. I mean, because the fact is they didn't ultimately ruin the night, right?
Exactly.
Sure, you had to move a little bit, but this is a story for your grandkids, right? You'll be able to say, oh my God, yeah, we were subject to cancel culture. You have no idea what it's like. These masked thugs showed up and they tried to stop us, but we went ahead. It's wonderful. The phoenix rising from the flames. Everybody, this is Dan and Eliza from Whom by Fire. Please download their single. I will put a link in the description at the end of the stream. Take good care of yourself. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Dan and Eliza, everybody. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. They should not be going through this nonsense. They absolutely should not. These are not bad people. What on earth is going on that these thugs can just show up and decide, no, I don't like this. I'm not having this. And I am so sick of it. And I know you are too. Right. Before our next guest comes, let's see what we've got. Let me catch up. It's just that they have the backing. Yeah, Jan, I think that's a good point there. Doubt there are many who are actually doing all this. It's just that they have the backing of the powers that shouldn't be. I agree with you, Jan. I agree with you. Best wishes both, says Peter. The woke are the elites, useful idiots, says Stephen. Yes, they are. I don't know the answer to that, Hamish. Markson said, this is rock and roll 2024 style. It is. It is, isn't it? Facing down the fascists. I mean, how these people have the nerve to call themselves anti-fascists is beyond me. Healing the Silence says, thank you, Dan and Eliza. Keep spreading your joy and speaking your truth. And so say all of us. I wonder if I have a minute or two to run through a story. Actually, I do think I could quickly run through a story before our next guest arrives. Let me see which one we should go to first. Well, why don't we look at Russell Brand? Police are investigating what they call historical sex offence allegations against Russell Brand. And they have handed a file of evidence to the Crown Prosecution Service. Of course, it's the CPS who decide whether there will be charges or not. There we go. What am I trying to do here? People power rules. It does indeed, Robert. Yes, so it's down to the CPS to decide whether they will actually press charges. And as I say, a file of evidence has been passed to them for consideration. As part of the investigation, a man in his 40s has been interviewed by officers under caution on 3 separate occasions. Well, we all know it's Russell Brand now. I mean, that's fact. It came out in a Channel 4 documentary. He's talked about it himself. And the police say these interviews related to a number of non-recent sexual offences, which are alleged to have taken place both in and outside of London. Officers continue to support the CPS as part of their investigation. And Russell Brand, on the evening when it was announced, Russell Brand tweeted this: forgiveness is available for all of us. Yes, indeed it is, especially if you are a recent Christian convert. Now, I'm not saying that the timing of his conversion to Christianity is interesting, but it's interesting. So where are we? Well, Detective Superintendent Andy Furphy, whose team is actually leading the investigation, said, we have a team of dedicated officers providing specialist support to the women who have come forward. We are committed to investigating sexual offences, no matter how long they are alleged to have taken place. Brand has denied the allegations against him and said his relationships were always consensual. So let's be clear, he's not been charged. So we are not actually in contempt of court at this moment in time. But I'm reminded of what some of his old production staff said about him a year ago when these allegations first came out. In fact, what they said in the Channel 4 documentary was that they described themselves as basically pimps. TV staff who worked with him talked about the culture of sex that existed around him, about how he would point to young females in the audience of his various shows that he was presenting, and production staff would then be sent to give out telephone numbers, and then these women would ring like days later saying, he saw me and now he doesn't want to see me again. He's not answering my call. Yeah, well, that's what happens when you hook up with a narc. Not that I'm actually diagnosing him, but I suspect. And staff talked to dispatches, including his own former PA. There are claims that his former boss at BBC Two, Leslie Douglas, knew that Brand was actually having sex with competition winners in the toilets. And is alleged to have failed to act on these. Brand, as I say, denies all allegations. And the question is he being set up because he's now so-called anti-establishment and a so-called truther? Or did he become a truther because he knew it would assist him if these allegations ever surfaced? I think that is worth pondering. And can the same be said regarding his very recent conversion to Christianity? I mean, it's been very high profile, hasn't it? He's appeared with Jordan Peterson saying the Lord's Prayer and Tucker Carlson, and then he was baptizing somebody in the River Thames. Because the thing about Russell Brand, and I know this from experience, is that Russell Brand leaps on something and then he wants to lead it. Anyway, the jury is still out. In many respects, there are no charges, but the CPS are considering it. I think one of the most damning testimonies about him was from Helen Berger, who worked for him between 2006 and 2007, and said her perspective on Brand's sex addiction changed when she recognized one of the women in a series of explicit photos that he showed colleagues at the Edinburgh Festival, which is really nasty stuff. I hate those kind of people. I really loathe those kind of people. And I've never hidden the fact that I've always found Russell Brand really quite repugnant, but so what? Anyway, there you go. We will let you know if the CPS decide to press charges. I want to bring in my next guest because she's here and she's waiting, and she's a troublemaker just like me, which I absolutely love. It is the journalist, Charlotte Gill. Good morning, Charlotte.
Hi, Sonia and everyone watching. Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you with us. Charlotte, why can't you just be one of those nice little journalists who don't get in any trouble at all? Because you are really somebody who puts your neck on the line, aren't you?
Good question. Gosh. There's just there's so much scandal, so much to unearth at the moment. It's almost just like there's too much.
There is. And thank God you're cataloguing it. I absolutely love the title of what you're doing, by the way, Woke Waste. I think it is absolutely genius. I will put a link in the description to Charlotte's work. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's frankly gobsmacking. You've got this brilliant project that you've launched where you look into where our money, taxpayers' money, is being spent. And it is quite shocking. And I was listening to an interview that you did with Trigonometry, and you were talking about what made you sort of fall on this. And I'm familiar with the first study that made you fall on it, and that was pregnant men, right? Talk to people who may not be familiar with it, but the title already will be making some of our viewers heave, by the way.
Yeah, so I stumbled on the beginning of Woke Waste. I started writing news for the Telegraph, and I got tipped off about this study on non-binary education at universities. And I started looking into the research backgrounds of the academics on the study. And one of them had worked on this study called International Pregnant Men, something around those lines. And I thought, what on earth is that? And then it led me to a website that I'd never been on before. And I saw it said funded value, and it was around £500,000. And I remember thinking, who's paid for that? And this really was how it kicked off. It said the Economic and Social Research Council, ESRC. And a quick Google, I was like, that's us. We're paying for the Economic and Social Research Council. And in total, we spent over 600,000, close to 700,000 on this pregnant man study. And it's one of the lead researchers on it is Sally Hines. She's quite infamous. I don't know, you must have come across her, Sonia.
Oh, I have. Oh, yes. She's said plenty about me on X, actually. I know exactly who you're talking about. So she was leading the study, wasn't she?
Yeah, she's lead investigator. She's had a lot of money over the years. I mean, that's not all of it. It must come to $1 million, maybe over, doing her ridiculous pseudoscience research. But really, she's pretty obnoxious, and she's rude to you, Sonia. She's rude to gender critical feminists who are all taxpayers, and you know, part of the system perpetuating her nonsense work. And but she's really just emblematic of the system. You know, she's not an anomaly. There are just so many Sally Hines out there. And once I'd found that, Woke Waste was really born, because I'd been on the UK Research and Innovation website. Most people have never heard of that. I've not met anyone that's ever heard of that, and yet we're spending just under 9 billion a year on this quango. So yeah,
it's absolutely insane. But essentially, because people are like, but men can't have children, it's not about men, commenters, not at all. She was actually studying women, right? That is the reality. She was studying women, and as far as I know, women have been able to give birth, well, from the beginning of time, frankly. So it's an absolute twisted way of using our money when it can be used in so many ways. And you've done a series of videos which are really fabulous. And you talk about funding for dummies. Now, this is really important, your breakdown about the funding, because the thing is, it's almost a network, isn't it? And it's so easy for us to get lost. You're absolutely right. You had to do another search to find out that, oh my God, it's actually me paying for that. Right. So let us talk about how this actually works, right? Talk to us about splintering and the fake consensus building that is taking place.
Yeah, so I guess there's two different ways. Like, number one is just the basic fact that the taxpayer, their money is just, due to Tony Blair quangoifying the whole of Britain, our money is just sent, or we just cannot keep up with the different ways our money is sent. And also, because our system has so many different pockets and quangos, it makes us quite vulnerable to funding coming in from elsewhere. You know, say that's someone with corporate interests or something more hostile, like a hostile government, Russia, for instance. And I'm not accusing anyone of having Russian funding, but it's just the more bodies you have to manage. I mean, I kind of compare it to, there's a Netflix documentary about a Dutch sperm donor, and he had 1,000 children. And I kind of think Tony Blair has the quango equivalent. Ooh. He just spread his seed in the shape of quangos globally as well, as this Dutch sperm donor did. And he's got all these children everywhere, but he can't keep an eye, you know, no one can keep an eye on what they're up to. And then, yeah, I guess my funding for dummies was basically about, I mean, I've read a lot on Russian funding, actually, which is where I've really got the kind of understanding the mechanics of how some funding works. But it's all about making the few look like the many. You know, if I'm a big funder, I don't want to become some sort of Murdoch type enemy figure. Like, you know, everyone knows where the news building is. It's quite an obvious funder, but more subtle ones, the more worrying ones, are using their funding to create masses of groups. And that then creates the idea of a chorus. And, you know, the idea that their ideas just coming from one source are more popular than they are. And that begins to distort public opinion. You start thinking, maybe I'm the wrong one. Maybe women can have a penis because all these other people are saying it, but they're all derived from the same source.
They're captured, right? But you're absolutely right. It's very clever, because it's a very clever way of consensus building. Okay, so but let's have a look at some of these figures, because Charlotte, this is an egregious use of money given where we currently are. We've just had this hideous budget. I mean, people are literally facing the notion of, certainly our pensioners, whether they can eat or heat this winter, and the spending of this money is really quite shocking. So let's start with it, really. Let's get going. First of all, tell us about the Barrow Cadbury Trust, and why did the Conservative government give them £250,000?
I have no idea. Basically, I became interested in foundations. At first, I just, you know, when I was looking through Woke Waste, I was only really interested in taxpayer-funded things, and foundations don't look like that. But actually, a lot of them do get taxpayer funding. And the Barrow Cadbury Trust is one example. And foundations, in my experience, are some of the most ruinous I think, for society, because a lot of them are part of the open border lobby. We have a ridiculous system where taxpayers, the majority, anyone sensible is looking at the borders, immigration. They're saying, I know that we cannot take much more. We're not an infinite wallet. But you have, and we're giving strong signals to the Conservative government, say, you know, yes, Rwanda plan or whatever. But then at the same time, our taxpayer money was being given by the same government saying, let's stop the boats. 1.4 million was given through the Paul Hamlin Foundation, which explicitly believes in open borders and envisions a world where everyone's free to move. The Barry Cadbury Trust, it's the Quakers. I mean, I'm not the first one to say this, but it's a lot of Quaker trusts that are sort of hippie. Yeah, let's all hold hands and everyone around the world is free to come here. And they also gave 200, like you say, 250 grand to them, and they're just completely campaigning against our interests. And it's not, I don't want to say underhand, but I mean, it is in a way.
It is, isn't it, though? It's a sleight of hand that we're being subjected to. We're being told on the one hand that these governments are very keen to finally tackle illegal immigration, because it is illegal if you come across without any paperwork. Obviously, I know people say, no, you can't say that about human beings, but let's be real here. So on the one hand, they're claiming to do that with things like the Rwandan plan, but on the other, they are huging vast amounts of our taxpayer money in order to be able to facilitate it. And some of the things that you found, honestly, Charlotte, is actually gobsmacking. What the hell is African Rainbow Family that we gave £248,000 to?
Yeah, their project, I believe it's called No Pride in Deportation.
Yeah.
And it's just one of many. I mean, this is me trying to, when I included that in an article, this was me doing a quick roundup. You know, I'm like, how many can I cope with in one article? But there's like masses more, you know. This is just the tip of the iceberg. People are shocked by this small sample of what I'm showing them.
Yes,
I'm telling you, it's like going to the underworld and, you know, you've got to come up for air and be like, guys, you don't know what I've seen there. It's absolutely shocking. And it's putting our national safety much, I mean, everyone, all of these organizations side with the non-national. They don't side, they view like nationals as the baddies, apart from when they want our money. That's all we are for them. They're like, they don't care really about anything that happens to British citizens other than, please come have your money, thank you.
But these are huge amounts of money. Like this amount, the African Rainbow Family, right? ARF, as it's called, is a not-for-profit organisation that supports lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersexual and queer people of African heritage and from wider Black and Asian minority ethnic groups. But this grant, it says, will fund a campaign and communications officer. They are paying huge amounts of money for these nonsense roles. And that's what I really object to. When I see people on a hospital waiting list, they can't get a new hip for 2.5 years. It's like, it's really disturbing to me to see this absolute nonsense. And Charlotte, when I call you a troublemaker, I mean in the best way possible. I think a true, decent journalist needs to be a troublemaker, because you need to be alerting people to what's happening here. So let's keep working through this. I mean, in your, like you said, this small sample was shocking to people. It was shocking to me. I mean, I literally can keep working through it, and one after another is horrific. Independent workers of Great Britain nurturing and developing migrant leaders from the grassroots. But what about nurturing and developing working class British people who feel that they've been kicked to the curb? Did you find any good grants for them, by the way?
The thing is, there are certain vague programs like, it'd be like the children's meals program or just something, but there's just a disproportionate amount we're not talking about Britain being devoid of compassion, no refugee support. We're talking about it being the norm. Like, this is just, everything is geared towards that. It's almost like the priority. And we don't know, some of these people we're trying to deport are like dangerous for us, but it's all sort of, I mean, I even saw the Barry Cadbury Trust had this resource. It's sort of to help families visiting Muslim communities in prison, to help them understand how the criminal justice system works. And it had this stat. It said, it said, it says something like 18% of the prison population are Muslim, but the actual proportion of Muslims in the population is 6%. And it was written in a way that sort of like, isn't that a gross injustice? Like, as if it's some sort of prejudice, this amount of people are put in prison. Like, everything is sympathetic to what Occam's razor would just tell us are the perpetrators of crime. Right. Everything's sort of like, well, if only they went to the football club, and if only these evil Tories. There's just nothing about, can you just not commit crime and let's build more prisons?
Yeah, that's a great idea. But and also there are these organizations which almost appear to be working slightly outside of the law. For example, Migrant Action as one example. It's a grassroots. They describe themselves as a grassroots advocacy and migrant justice organization working with people who've migrated to the UK and are outside the asylum system. So illegally, if they're outside of the asylum system. So that is nearly, again, £250,000 for this.
I know.
My mind is like blown, Charlotte. You must be so annoyed discovering all this.
Do you know what? It has given me sleepless. It has kept me awake at night. Like, oh my God, what is going on? And people's reactions are classic shock reactions. When I first started showing it to people, they laughed. I mean, some of it is kind of funny. Like, we're funding this study, for instance, on the Europe that gay porn built and things like pregnant men.
The what?
It's called the Europe that gay porn built, 1945 to 2000. And we gave it, well, we didn't give it, but 840,000 in government grants.
Nearly £1 million.
Yeah, and the researcher behind it has had about £1 million, and he also studied something about gay pig fetishes, about gay men pretending to be pigs, and we funded this. What? I mean, it's just scandalous. Did
you manage to find out who had given the okay on any of these? Because that would be interesting. Is this coming from central office? Is this coming from Whitehall?
It's so it's the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology. They're meant to have oversight of it, but I do know there are certain obstacles as well. Like, I've been told from the inside about there's something called the Haldane Principles. I think that means something like the universities, they have to be left to get on with it, and the government aren't meant to get too involved. It does sound actually like there are a lot of obstacles. So even the most well-intentioned government minister will have difficulty. But it's such a, it's just more and more, it's that Tony Blair system, because the whole system is designed in a way that makes it really difficult to work out where things have gone, where funding's flowing, and almost you could argue purposefully, because it's making it harder to get rid of. It feels like, I've always said it feels like a whole government system feels like we've been screwed over by lawyers from Islington. To try and unpick this stuff is incredibly difficult, and
it feels like we're being. I'm sorry, it feels like we're being gaslit, though. I mean, it is gaslighting, isn't it? Going back to that whole idea that we're being told that there is a drive to actually sort out the issue of immigration. And Charlotte, anybody who watches this knows me very well, right? And that is, I've always been pro-multiculturalism. I choose to live in London. My daughter is mixed race. But I also understand that there are issues that need to be addressed. They need to be addressed. And that doesn't make us racist for addressing them. And it doesn't make you a racist researcher or journalist for tackling this, although many people would be terrified to do what you're doing, Charlotte. You and I come from the mainstream. They'd be terrified to do something like this largely.
Yeah, well, I think, I'm the same as you. I grew up in Islington. It's just the norm, like how I grew up, multicultural. And people assume if you're writing about this stuff that you must be like hard right.
Yes.
And it's just about, but it's the Overton window. It's about everything's been pushed so far left, that just being a centrist makes you radically right wing now, whereas we're just calling for balance. We've got, for instance, we've got a 4 million shortfall in homes. Obviously, we can't take the amount of people we're having for a year, and we're going to run out of money eventually. We're spending something like 8 billion a year on asylum hotels. That's going to increase, and then funding all these other projects for asylum seekers as well. But yeah, I guess, I do view it, and I'm sure you're the same, Sonia. Like, I view it as a journalist job, as well as interrogating things. Like, you have to push debate back. You're kind of, you know, you're part of the pacemaker or whatever, or not pacemaker, but you're moving the placeholder. And if you are combative, you're starting to move it into the right position where debate should be.
So this is primarily affecting universities and charities. Any other sectors?
Local government is very bad. NHS, although to be fair, I haven't really looked into it because it's kind of more known about the NHS. So I'm kind of digging around areas that aren't really known about. But yeah, I'd say local government, universities, charities, and the arts are pretty bad as well. It's almost the common denominator is mostly all the sectors that continually say we're on our knees. You know, you'd think that they'd been subjected to the most Dickensian conditions and given 1p a year in government funding when it's normally hundreds of millions, and they still can't do anything with it.
Now, obviously, your job, as well as my job, is to raise awareness about these things. But I also like to try and find a sort of solution to the madness as well. Any idea of what we can actually do about this? They're saying in the comments, we need transparency. We need to be able to see where this is being spent. Well, first of all, I will put a link to Charlotte's work. You will be able to see a huge volume of where it's being spent. But is there anything we can actually do? What kind of pushback can the public get involved in?
Yeah, I'd say in the immediate, don't buy a national lottery ticket. I'm going to write an article on it at some point, but they're very, very woke. They're funding awful stuff. They're funding some of these pro-asylum seeker organisations, making it harder. So don't buy a national lottery ticket. Probably say cancel your BBC TV license.
Well, that's a great piece of advice anyway. We can get that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just appalling. I'd say, so those are just immediate things you can do. In terms of other suggestions, I've written on my blog some principles. Like, I think if we do get any sort of conservative right-wing government again, creating some secular principles, defining, as in like a new version of secularism, like any state-funded organization has to be has to be secular. It can't tell people to wear pronoun badges. It can't do things that are ideological, because that's where a lot of the enforcement is coming from. Or they lose their funding for breaches, and a public system where they can be reported for breaches of the secular charter. And then in general, I think the thing is, like, I was having sleepless nights about my workplace, but actually I'm feeling more positive recently because a lot of people are really getting on it. I have tweeted where to find it. The more people look into it, the better. We need a lot of nosing. We need more publishing it. People with tech are really useful because they can automate a lot of the, I do it all manually. I'm like, this one's woke. Well, but some people are telling me they can automate that.
Fantastic. You describe it as the biggest scandal you've never heard of. And I think that there's truth in that. People are actually quite horrified at some of but there's so much more, people. We're talking millions of pounds of waste here. But it is also not waste to the people who are handing out our money, because that means to a certain degree that the people they're handing it to are then compromised. It's a whole system, isn't it, Charlotte?
It's a horrific system. I mean, I've had people in the trigonometry interview that I did that they've written in the comments they've had to turn off after 5 minutes because they're in shock about how bad it's a galaxy of waste. And it's just awful. I mean, I've had a lot of backlash from academics and people saying it's really mean of me to go looking. And I'm like, as soon as you take 1p of taxpayer money, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you're a PhD. Oh, boo-hoo, I'm a PhD researcher. That was a lot of the kind of gist, like, oh, when they're in their 20s. I was like, you are immediately up for scrutiny. Taxpayers have a right, including journalists, to have a look at what you're up to. And the revealing thing is, some people have blocked me. They don't want me to look, and they're like, she's so mean. She started publishing what we're up to, and it's like, hang on. Don't you want me to publish your research if it's that great?
Yes.
I'm giving you a good showcase. And if your work stands up to scrutiny and I'm just a bigot who hates the humanities and arts, won't it speak for itself? But they're embarrassed because they know when they come out of the group thing, there's a horrendous group thing, and someone's just like, it's like Emperor's New Clothes, when someone's just like, this is a bit crap, isn't it? They
Yeah.
just can't handle it.
No, they can't. Not be said, would the Daily Mail run a story on this? I actually think they would. I worked for the Daily Mail for a long time, and I think Charlotte did actually, as well as a freelancer. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing Charlotte's name in the Mail, but I could be wrong. But I do actually think this is a Daily Mail story. I think they're probably one of the few that would actually run it, Charlotte. I would. And if you want a contact, I'll give you one. Don't worry about that. And also, of course, the other thing I think that is attached to this is the question mark that you've raised, and I think it's an important one, about the funding of a lot of these protest groups. We had a band on earlier who was subject to Antifa at a gig. They had to move. It was horrible. And we're all questioning that it's so organized, isn't it? These protest groups don't appear to be at all organic, Charlotte.
They are. Do you know what? I would love to have facial recognition technology so that I can see, oh, you were there, you were there. I don't otherwise want that, but that would be. They are all. This is what I mean about the few becoming the many. I call them like shill HQ. They just there's no way that they're all fringe causes, and somehow there happens to be the same sort of face, the same posters every weekend. I actually know I'm saving it for a proper scoop, but I actually know where like woke HQ is, and I know for a fact that they're all coming from the same place. Well, most of them. I even for a tidbit for this interview, like there's an address in Covent Garden called Shelton Street, 70, I think it's 75 to 77, and it's where the Socialist Worker is registered, and it's linked to all sorts. It's linked to Led by Donkeys, Animal Rebellion, Zara Sultana, Richard Bergen, and some people have said to me, this is just a registered office of address, but I'm saying there's too many coincidences, and I just find it, they're organized, these people, and they're just pretending. I mean, I think they're just pretending that they're all different groups, so it's an optical illusion. The electorate thinks, wow, look at all these pro-Palestine protests, look at all these trans protests, but it's just like it's like, I'll do your protest, you come to mine. And how are they? People just need to be, in general, not to get too on my high horse, but people just in general need to be more cynical. if you go to the printing shop and you go and, if you print like a document, it costs so much money. So are we really to believe that all these young people that are so empowered about their future but have no money suddenly go off to the printing shop and are able to afford like thousands of these banners?
Right.
Yeah, someone behind it has money, and the things that people need to start. I'm trying to encourage people to start behaving like the left with the right. Who funds you? Just ask it, even if you're wrong. Just being that kind of thing.
Absolutely, Charlotte. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. You've literally incensed our viewers. But the thing is, I think it's really important. The whole thing is that we have to get mad, right, before we can do anything half the time. And I think your work is so vital, so important. I'm delighted you joined us this morning, because it is absolutely right. You're absolutely right. As soon as a penny of public funds spent anywhere we need to know about, we have a right to know about it. And we as journalists we are obliged to do that. It should be part of our remit if we are investigative journalists. And you most certainly are. And you were sticking up for the name. And thank God for that, Charlotte, because I'm so sick and tired of public relation journalists. And if there's one thing that I absolutely am certain you're not, is a public relation journalist. So thank you for being here with us this morning. Absolute pleasure to have you. We will put a link to your work. Link to your work. Anything you want to say as a parting shot, Charlotte? Just subscribe and also join the revolution. Be nosy, and the more the better. So and thank you so much, Sonia. I've really loved coming on. So thank you. Lovely day to you too, everybody. The tremendous Charlotte Gill, showing us all what journalists should really be like. Take good care of yourself, Charlotte. Have a fantastic week. Brilliant. Isn't she brilliant? The thing is, it's so important to have Charlottes. A very wise soul, Charlotte. Thank you, says Cavan. Indeed. Thank you for coming on, Charlotte, says Healing the Silence. Follow the money, says Kat. Rocking it, Charlotte. Keep exposing the corruption. Indeed. I love it. I think she's absolute kick-ass. I see what people say about her on Twitter, X, And it's very similar to the kind of stuff they say about me. And I didn't actually realize that she'd done an interview with Trigonometry until last night, but I just seen her on Twitter and I just thought I really like her because she speaks her mind. And I just think that's so important. And because journalism has become so cowardice. And I saw somebody earlier say about how they miss Rise. Well, we're here. We're here, but in a different form, but it's still the same thing. And thank you for being here. Yes, it is actually a shocking amount of money that Charlotte has discovered. And there's just so much more. A lot of these people are literally getting like $250,000 at a time for officers for their organization. So check out Woke Waste. And as I say, I will put a link in the description for you. And I'm going to bring in my next guest because we're not hanging around this morning. Let me just find the information. I will be talking after our next guest about royal hypocrites. Anybody who knows me knows I would abolish the monarchy in a heartbeat, but there was a very good documentary on Channel 4 this weekend. And as viewer Teresa says, makes me sick to the stomach thinking about how my mum walked the Great Wall of China to raise money for a cancer hospice related to the royal family. More about that after our next guest. So let me bring him in. Here he is. He's been with us before. Often, actually. It is Nigel Jacquelyn. Good morning to you, Nigel.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Great to have you with us. You are, of course, a statistician, and you're many things. You've also, been involved. Well, you've been involved in a number of things, including legal trials involving Metropolitan Police that you've talked about before. But you've taken an interest in the Lucy Letby case, which is great because I think as many well-informed people as possible who have eyes on this case is what is needed right now. So for those who don't know, of course, Lucy Letby is now currently serving, I believe, 15 whole life terms for the murder of 7 infants and the attempted murder of a further 7 at the Countess of Chester Hospital. And there is a great deal of discrepancies around this, isn't there, Nigel? The Thirlwell inquiry is currently ongoing in Liverpool Town Hall. And the Thirlwell inquiry started off by basically admonishing anybody who was questioning the convictions of Lucy Letby. But it's not just anybody questioning the convictions of Lucy Letby. We're talking about, well, statisticians as one, doctors, academics, various scientists. So, but they've been kind of like demonized as trolls, haven't they, Nigel? Why did you get interested in this case?
So I'm an operational researcher in statistics terms, which is the science of taking decisions. And when you take a decision, you need to collate all of your evidence and you need to make sure that your evidence is of sufficient quality. And I didn't follow the Letby case when it first was in court, but I saw Richard Gill on your show and my wife spoke to me about it, and it was the spreadsheet evidence that got me interested. So this was a spreadsheet that had rows showing staff and columns showing staff and rows showing deaths of neonatal babies and incidents of concern, with Lucy Letby present in all of them. And to me, that looked rather neat. So I then looked into it a little bit further, and it got worse. The further we went into it, the worse it got.
And I've never, as a journalist, I don't think I can actually recall in my lifetime, and certainly in my career, the sheer volume of newspapers and media platforms that are now coming out and raising questions about this. I find that curious in itself. And in fact, the Daily Mail article, a Daily Mail article has revealed that Lucy Letby was not on duty when many of the incidents occurred. And you questioned that. You said, my understanding is that this is exactly the kind of analysis Professor Jane Hutton asked for when she was initially contacted by Sussex Police. Fill us in on that.
Yeah, so Cheshire Police. So Jane Hutton, so the Statistical Society has a law and crime division, and she was president of that. And I think back originally when Cheshire Police were asked to look at it, they contacted her to seek her advice. And the first thing she asked for was, so let's say the spreadsheet was this big, she asked one that expanded it out to include other members of staff and to include other incidents. And that is what you would call a proper investigation. And shortly after that, her contract or relationship with Cheshire Police, as far as I understand, stopped. And that wider spreadsheet was never provided. And that, in essence, is what Letby's new defence lawyer has compiled, not using stuff necessarily from the evidence provided by the CPS and the police in the prosecution, but by using freedom of information requests and other data to do the job that Cheshire Police should have done in the first place.
Now, one of the reasons why I think it's particularly interesting that you are now covering this is you've written a piece actually today for the Conservative Woman, which you sent me just before we came on air, and it's Fix the NHS First, Find What Broke It. I managed to skim it. It's a great piece, but you also sent me some of the research involved last night. Talk to people about what you've looked into.
So back in November 2020, there were a number of us who were trying to stand up for informed consent because there were some mandates going on that would have resulted in 70 or 100,000 NHS workers losing their jobs if they didn't take two things by April 2022. So we did a survey. We got, I think, 1,600 medical professionals who were opposed to the mandates to take part. And then we recontacted them in May this year to ask them how things were now. And one question we asked was, how would you compare the state of the NHS with 2019? And not a single one said better. There were 317 people. Most of them said much worse. And we asked them why. And their concerns are basically the same as everybody else's: waiting lists, access to GPs. But also there was this sort of management dogmatism that came up, so the unwillingness to listen, and the fact that in some comments that if you did speak out you would get into trouble. And there are other cases. There's a woman who had I think been raped at work, and she complained about it, and I think she's lost her job. And there are 10 other cases in the same employer, and so therefore she's not reporting something on her own, she's reporting a general issue. So there's this sort of cover up and management dogmatism that comes up. And the people who took part in the survey, the people who stood up for informed consent, actually tend to be older, more experienced people. 94% of them qualified in the UK, which is an interesting point in relation to some of the stuff you were discussing with Charlotte. So they are really the people that we want to be there in the NHS, standing up for what's right, looking after us as patients, not necessarily believing that medical interventions are always necessary. You don't have to take statins or whatever. But they're having a hard time, but we just need them to stick in there.
But what's, I think, really interesting about your survey and the research that you've put into it is it tells us so much about the culture of the NHS, doesn't it? It talks
Yes.
about a bullying culture that's taking place, a groupthink, a pressure to conform. We've heard this in the Lucy case, where nurses wanted to come forward and actually give a different side about who Lucy Letby was, and they were discouraged from doing so, right?
Yeah, and I've spoken to a couple of people who work in the NHS, and their first reaction, they didn't know much about the Letby case, but yes, that a group narrative will be formed. One of them was a surgeon, and he basically immediately came up with a number of alternative hypotheses as to why so many small and vulnerable babies might have died in a ward, which included inadequate staffing. And that indeed is one of the things that many people have pointed to. Letby was probably the most senior nurse there, but was not necessarily a completely fully qualified neonatal nurse. And so she may therefore have had responsibility for which she was not totally qualified. And the other thing with medics is that death is part of the job.
Right.
And So if someone dies under your watch, it's slightly traumatic. But we went to a Christmas play at the Royal Free Hospital with the trainee medics, and half of the jokes were about killing patients. So, you know, medics treat deaths differently, and neonates are very, very different to normal babies. And it's not surprising that so many of them died, given that the hospital was not adequately staffed and had just committed to taking on a larger intake of more vulnerable babies. You know, they are more at risk.
Many people, to echo what you've just said there, many people believe that Lucy Letby is a scapegoat for failings within the NHS. Do you feel that that has legs?
Yeah, I seriously do. And one of the responses to the Twitter feed is from a policeman who conducted investigations. So the police are dependent on the information they get, and that information came from senior hospital staff. One of the reports was that normally they would expect a ward round from the doctors or consultants, I think, let's say 2 times a day, and it was happening 2 times a week or something, and that senior staff were difficult to get hold of, or people were reluctant to call them. And Letby lived close to the hospital, and so therefore may have been more likely to come on call when there was difficulty. And so she may therefore effectively been covering for doctors, which is really wrong. But yes, I get the impression that a narrative may have been put together, and that may well be common practice within some of these NHS and probably other state organisations.
Robert says, I worked at a hospital. They're horrible. I was scapegoated and sacked because I wasn't in the clique. And there is a sense that there's a clique in this case, isn't there? And many people feel it. And actually, one of the leading people has actually recently kind of backtracked on what he was saying, Dr. Dewey Evans. So that's curious as well, because I think he was a significant factor in her convictions.
Yeah. The defence and prosecution bits really perplex me.
Yeah,
she doesn't seem to have been defended at all.
I agree.
I was given some stats on Dewey Evans. I'm not sure whether these are correct or not. Apparently, he's worked on 42 cases and only lost 1, which seems quite unusual. I think about 1/6 of cases people are found not guilty. So 42 to 1 is quite a good record. There are a lot of questions about Dewey Evans. I haven't got a full whatever on him.
Yeah, I agree. Cavan said, why is the truth in life such a hated scenario? I don't know. Ask George Orwell. I mean, the thing is that there is, being a truth seeker or a truth speaker, yes, you will get a lot of hate for it. But eventually, usually, things often turn around. And I think this is one of those cases. I'm deeply concerned for her, though, because they've been through the appeal system and they've been denied. And obviously, with the ongoing Thirlwell inquiry, all that appears to be doing really is just kind of solidifying the narrative that she is one of the most extreme serial killers of babies in the UK. And can you see any way around this? I mean, I know she's got a new legal team. What are they doing?
So they've put together this new, let's say, version of the spreadsheet, which is broader and deeper. So I've actually got some numbers.
Go for it. A numbers man giving us numbers. Break it down. What does this mean?
So I think she probably worked about 1/3 of the time. And so the chances of her being present on 6 or 7 occasions, by 6 or 7 deaths, are 1 in 700 or 1 in 2,200. Now that's actually not that's not unusual, because probably across the UK there are 700 neonatal nurses working at any given sort of time period, any year, maybe more. And so therefore there will be one of them who by chance happens to be present for all 7 significant incidents. If you include the incidents of concern, which takes it up, I think, to, let's say, more than 15, double that, it then becomes 1 in 5 million or 1 in 270 million, depending on the chances. So that the improbability of her being present for all of the things relies materially on the inclusion of the incidents of concern. And so that was the statisticians' issue with the spreadsheet. Who selected the issues of concern, and were there any other deaths that happened during that period? But that's in essence what her new lawyer has tried to look at with the spreadsheet. And then there's a whole bunch of other medical stuff, like about the diagnoses, because in essence, when someone dies, my dad died recently, and the coroner, they're quite thorough. I had to reassure the coroner. So he fell at home and then went into hospital. I had to reassure the coroner that nobody had pushed him at home and sort of caused his death. And with the babies in the Cheshire hospital, the coroner had ruled that virtually all of them were natural deaths or normal deaths. I think there was one unexplained one. And yet when it then came to the police inquiry, they magically turned into unexplained deaths, which could be explained by murders using things which nobody had actually seen, and so therefore all of the evidence was circumstantial. So I think that's what they're working on. Yes, she's done an appeal, and so this now has to go to, I forget the name, it's the Criminal Review Case Board or something.
Yes.
And I think that is the last chance.
Case Review Commission, yes.
Yeah. But she has got someone who seems to know what they're doing.
Thank God, at last.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And this is one of the files of unused evidence from our case. I suspect in the Letby case, the files would probably have filled this room.
Yes.
You know, and one allegation is that Jane Hutton's involvement should have been part of the unused evidence disclosure, but it wasn't disclosed. Because if someone had said, hang on, you need to look at this, that should be in. So the unused evidence is evidence that exists within the police files, which the police and CPS will not be using in order to get you, to prosecute you. And that is stuff that could be used by the defence, so that the prosecution obviously don't use evidence that will exonerate you.
No.
So that's in the police files, and it should be in the unused evidence. The theory is that that wasn't included, but it may well have been in there because there was so much stuff that no one found it. And also, I think the medical evidence was probably too much for the jury, and they probably couldn't really take it all in.
I think some of it, they were also kind of blinded by science. This whole idea of air embolisms as one example, I think that was quite difficult for people to understand as well. My sense as a journalist of many, many years is this is an unsafe conviction, and that is no disrespect to the families involved. I'm so sorry for you, and you deserve to know the truth of what happened. That's the reality, isn't it, Nigel? The work you and I are doing is not a disrespect to these absolutely grieving, heartbroken parents. It is hopefully to give them actually some kind of sense of truth that they're not yet seemingly receiving.
Yeah, and someone else has pointed out that the compensation you get for the death of an infant is lower if it's murder than if it's negligence by the hospital.
That's curious. I didn't realize that. That is interesting, isn't it? So just, Nigel, before you leave us, what are your feelings? Do you think this is an unsafe conviction?
Yes, I think it merits a retrial. And I'm with Richard Gill and others that I think that the chances are that she's innocent are extremely high.
I think this is a really interesting comment. I just want to put this on the screen, get your feedback on this. The NHS will not accept that the failings were theirs. Lucy is carrying the can for their failing. Now, that is a problem that we hear about this often when it comes to the criminal Criminal Case Review Commission, and that is, it's very difficult for the establishment to accept when they've made a mistake. Andrew Malkinson was a perfect example. They were repeatedly given information that he wasn't actually the rapist that he'd been convicted for, and I think served 17 years for, and they almost refused to see it. So that in itself is an obstacle, isn't it, when the establishment refused to accept that they may have made mistakes?
Yeah, and actually our own case is a case in point. It started in 2018 and it could have stopped in 2018. But for some reason, hopefully it's just stopped in September when it went to court and was thrown out. It's this doubling down factor that's the real problem, and not accepting that there is a mistake.
Chris has thrown us something. I was curious, so I looked up the before, during, and after mortality rates at that hospital. It returned to normal after her arrest. Do you know anything about that?
That could well be down to the admissions. So I think at the time there was also a review of the hospital, which concluded that it was inadequately staffed, and so they may have taken on fewer at-risk infants. And it could be that Letby made mistakes and babies died, and that others made mistakes, because the other thing in the recent investigation is that the issues with the babies in some cases started, let's say, 2 shifts before Letby was working. So, you know, infants might die suddenly, or they might die over a period of a couple of days. And so therefore you can't isolate the cause of death to a single shift. So it could be that during that time mistakes were made and then they sorted themselves out.
And we also know, and I know this for a fact because I was covering it at the time, and that is they were depleting the NHS during the period that she was said to have been operating, and there was actually excess deaths in the NHS for a period of time, and that was all over the UK. So that wasn't just about the Countess of Chester Hospital. So it seems to me that they're not taking account of the big picture of what was going on out in the wider society, Nigel.
Well, statistically, if on average each hospital has 2 sort of difficult deaths in a given area, the chances of one having 7, that there will be one. You know, it could be random. It could be that actually the consultants should have been doing ward rounds. It could be to do with the plumbing. It could be a whole bunch of factors. And I just really don't believe that she murdered all of those neonates.
And some people go, oh, you only say that because, you know, she's, you know, a nice white woman who, you know, and all those kind of things and everything. And if she was, you know, somebody coming in from another country, we would find it easier to believe that. What do you say to that?
Entirely immaterial.
And it is immaterial, especially because I know who your partner is. It is completely, entirely immaterial. But I think I wanted to raise that up because people say that. They often say that. And I think it's ridiculous. It is this whole idea that, you know, we feel some sort of empathy and compassion with her as white people because she's white. I certainly don't. She's a murderer. She's a murderer. But equally, if I believe that she's sitting on an unsafe conviction, which I do, I will shout about it. So Nigel, thank you so much for joining us. I will put a link to your article in the description because it's excellent. I know it's going to be excellent. I look forward to reading it in full later. And thank you for the work that you're doing. And I agree with you. We need a retrial here for Lucy Letby. Everybody, this is Nigel Jacquelyn, and he is the good stats man. Yes, he is. Take good care of yourself, Nigel.
Thanks very much. See you again. Cheers. Bye.
Good to have you with us. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right. Excuse me. It's a country world full of lies, says Robert. It is. It's horrifying, isn't it? Should we have a good old slag off of the royals? Let's do that. I load the honestly, I just load the rules, and the thing is people go, oh, well, it's not really them, is it? You know, they're part of an institution. No, it's them. Any of them at any moment in time could choose to change the rules. Yeah, but they uphold the establishment, obviously. I have never been a royalist. I wasn't born to be a royalist. I come from a family that look at royalists as if they need to get off their knees. But I do also understand that many people believe that royals serve a purpose. Many people operate under the illusion that royals bring a great deal of money into the country. Well, that's a lie, actually. It is actually a lie. Legoland Windsor receive more visitors, national and international, than any of the royal palaces. And in fact, for many years, the world's #1 tourist attraction was the Palace of Versailles in France. And of course, France doesn't even have any royals because they know what to do with royals. Right, now, let me talk about this Channel 4 programme. Channel 4 dispatches with the Sunday Times. And I always have to put a question mark over it when establishment media are doing things like this, because you always have to wonder why they're doing it and what's it all about. But nonetheless, I think some of the revelations are very, very interesting indeed. What we learnt is that the royal family has received millions of pounds of income in rent from the National Health Service, from schools and from the armed forces. And the programme dispatches the king, the prince and their secret millions. Actually reported about details of rental agreements that have not been given to Parliament. So this is money that is secretly being made, okay? And it is with regard to the two vast estates that the King Charles, I always do this because I hate kings, princes, and the only reason that I will use that as King Charles is because you automatically know who I'm talking about. But not that I consider these people to be kings or princes, not at all. They are just titles. But anyway, so the point is it's about two vast estates, and that is the Duchy of Lancashire and the Duchy of Cornwall, which are owned by Charles and Will, respectively. And the problem is that they have been very secretive for a very long time about how much money they're making off the backs of us. But what was interesting about this program was last week, Prince William did this whole big PR spiel, a two-part series for ITV about how he knows how to end homelessness. Yes, that's right. Somebody who visited homeless people probably once or twice when his mother was alive now knows how to end homelessness. And I don't actually care if he's been to multiple homeless shelters in the intervening years, which I don't for one second believe he has. The point is somebody with multiple homes and who is a multi-millionaire and who has never understood how poverty operates suddenly believes they have the answer of how to cure homelessness. Well, it turns out that some of the properties that Prince William is renting out, and by the way, there was an article for 2019. I wonder if I've got it here. I can just show you because here it is. Look at this. 2019, a sad aside to Blackpool, Prince William vows to take a stand against slum landlords as he and Kate are left deeply affected on visit to one of Britain's most deprived streets. Well, it turns out that Prince William is, in fact, in 2024, a slum landlord. And what is annoying is that the estates, the duchy estates, are not subject to corporation tax, and the royals do not pay capital gains tax on the assets they sell either. And they voluntarily pay income tax on the surplus and the amount we don't know. So they could be paying a £5 for all we know, because it makes good PR for them to say we are voluntarily paying income tax on the surplus. But the report points out that the duchess say they are not funded by taxpayers, but they do receive income from public services. That is the reality, as I say. NHS, armed forces, schools. And the documentary raises significant concerns about the environmental impact of some of the estate's contracts, including those with mining companies as one example. And bear in mind that William and Charles are part of the whole WEF, Build Back Better, nut zero nonsense. They are. So again, just really in line with what Charlotte was saying at the start of the program, and that is we're being told they're doing one thing with one hand, but they're actually doing another with the other hand. And that is William is a slum landlord. There was mold in some of the properties that he's renting out, that his estate is renting out. And I actually think that one of the reasons for the dispatches was actually as a kind of retaliation to ITV, because these establishment organizations don't care. They uphold the royals, and they have done for a very, very long time, even if they pretend they don't. And I know that Channel 4 is supposed to be like the rebel on TV, but it's Channel 4. Come on now. And I actually think what they're probably doing is an up yours to ITV for running the PR job on William last week. There was a puff piece in The Guardian to advertise William's series last week. And it was all about, I'll show people how to prevent homelessness. The arrogance of him, the arrogance. And I read you that quote from Teresa. I started to, that Teresa had made, and she sent me an article, and it's this kind of stuff that really makes me so sad and so angry. As Teresa said, to remind you, she said, it makes me sick to the stomach thinking about how my mum walked the Great Wall of China to raise money for a cancer hospice related to royal family. Wonder if Sonia Poulton will be covering King Charles III on Wake Up on Monday. Well, Teresa, absolutely yes. And of course, your lovely mum did do a great charity walk. And then what made it even sadder was your mum died alone without her family in that very same Prince of Wales hospice where she had worked for years. And because of the whole kind of C19 narrative, you were denied access. And you had to watch her die on FaceTime, Teresa. I'm so sorry to hear. See, that's the stuff royals should have been railing against. They didn't. They walked us into that hand in hand. Charles came out. Remember, he was one of the first people who had apparently been tested and was found to have C19. And he immediately broke the rules by going from one country to the next. Remember, he went off to Balmoral and he wasn't supposed to do that. He was supposed to stay where he was. But of course, he's a royal, so they're above the law, as we know. And they are. There's no doubt about it. But anyway, I actually think it was actually a really good program. Because bear in mind, more than 350,000 people in Britain lack a permanent home. The number of homeless people or at risk between the ages of 16 and 24 is estimated to have risen to more than 130,000 now. And William said, I'm not sitting here saying I'm going to solve the entire world's homelessness problems, but I'm going to show people how to prevent homelessness. Well, start off by not being a slum landlord, and start off by not taking public funds from the NHS, from the armed forces, from schools. All of that is absolutely abhorrent. These people are not for us. They're not for us. They're as greedy as they ever were. And by the way, I just want to disabuse some people of a notion that the Queen was any different. She made money from these places exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. She was no different. So there you go. These are horrible. And that's why I can't say it isn't about the royals, it's about the institution. It is about the royals because these are real people who are continuing to live like this. Well, the country is subject to what is going to be a new austerity. Teresa Hart says, healing the silence. Shout out if you've ever been homeless, says Eric. Yes. Yeah, Teresa, there she is in the comments. Thanks, everyone. You guys mean so much to me, and you mean the world to us, sweetheart. And love to your mum. Rest in peace to her. Yes, there you go. Sugar Puff. Charles signed off the levelling up bill, which is giving away sovereignty to the global parliament of mayors. Yes, it is. And as Healing the Silence points out, prevent homelessness when you've never been homeless. I just find it so arrogant, this whole idea. And it's everything that we see a lot of the time in kind of middle and upper class protesters, right? And that is they're looking at a situation from afar and they've no idea how it really works in reality. So, yeah. So interesting. Last week, ITV were pushing Prince William, we can end homelessness. And at the weekend, Channel 4 were pushing the whole idea, quite rightly, that the King, the Prince and their secret millionaires is taking place, going on and happening. And so there you go. So I have only one thing to say at this point, and that is, of course, abolish the monarchy. I'm not sure how we, as a decent society, can justify having a royalty in 2024. I certainly can't. I've never been able to justify it. I know some people can, but I can't. And some people go, oh, no, but we don't want a president. Why do you automatically assume it has to be either or? It doesn't. What about let's just changing the game, changing it completely, changing the parliamentary system, changing the establishment? Because the thing is, I truly believe this, and that is you cannot be a true radical who wants to change the system if you support royalty. No, it's impossible because they are the establishment. So there you go. And can I just say, a big shout out to establishment hack Isabel Oakeshott. And Isabel, I shall tell you who are parasites, and that is the royal family who you always uphold, you and your boyfriend. Isabel Oakeshott was on, I think it was Talk Radio last week, and she's upset a lot of my viewers. She really has. She described benefit claimants as parasites. I'm going to read you what she said. They're talking about new figures to do with Rachel Reeves' budget. And Oakeshott, Isabel Oakeshott is literally typical of an establishment hack, and that is they always take a swing at some of the most vulnerable amongst us. Don't get me wrong, there are people who swing the lead, right? There are people who should be working and who aren't, okay? No doubt about it, but not to the degree that Isabel Oakeshott likes to demonize people. So she said these figures are absolutely off the chart and they are completely unjustified. By not announcing such a crackdown, Rachel Reeves basically turned this into a budget of removing resources from those who work in order to keep on sustaining those who frankly can't be bothered to get out of bed and get themselves out, whether it's to an office or to any kind of job, and prefer to just sit on the sofa and order their Deliveroo and drive their Motability free vehicle and take everything that the state can offer. The state that is people like you and me and our very many listeners who are grafting just to try to make ends meet. Basically, these people are frankly parasites. Isabel Oakeshott, I would love to get into a room with you, 1-to-1, right? And duke it out, frankly, because I watched my brother, who had paid taxes all his life, deteriorate after he had a kidney transplant and he was forced to have a Motability scooter. This whole idea that people who are sick and ill or disabled want their life to be like that is absolutely abhorrent. She's abhorrent. Her partner is abhorrent. Remember what he was saying last week? I don't want to be associated with those Tommy Robinson people. These people do not represent you. They do not. They represent the parasitical so-called elitists. That's who they represent. And Oakeshott is an absolute piece of filth. She's literally the worst kind of journalism. Whereas somebody like a Charlotte Gill is the best in journalism, Isabel Oakeshott is the worst in journalism. And a big shout out to my mate Sam, who was utterly offended by what this mad hack had to say. Isabel Oakeshott, officially from me, you are a piece of fill in the blanks. Yes, you are. And don't believe a word that comes out of her mouth. Remember her as a jab pusher, her and her partner, jab pushers. Anyway, absolute filth. And of course, I'm sure many of you have noticed that the Conservative Party have a new leader, Kemi. I'm not sure whether it is actually Badenoch or Badenoch. I think it's Badenoch, but we shall see. And Kemi is, what's the weffer, isn't she? Come on now, let's be real about this. And everybody's like, oh, it's so great. A black female leader for the Conservatives. I'm so sick of these identity politics. Just do the damn job. And the fact is, this is a handover. This is a handover from one weffer to another. There she is. And honestly, Kemi pushed for mandatory jabs. And a lot of people are acting as if she's like the second coming. But just because she knows what a woman is does not make her the second coming. And this is how they work very cleverly in politics, right? Is that there'll be one politician who will be like, totally against identity politics, which is supposed to be Kemi, and yet they're trading on it, right? Absolute madness. And then there'll be others who are totally for identity politics, and they play us off one against the other. Anyway, nothing new here, nothing new to see here. As far as I'm concerned, any politician who is part of WEF has not succeeded on their own merit. They've been selected into place because they will carry out the agenda of their global handlers. And the bar is currently so low when it comes to politicians that you literally only need to know what a woman is for people to think you are leadership material. Her husband's a banker, by the way. I don't know if that makes any difference, but interesting. So anyway, but yes, she did vote for vaccine mandates. So good luck, everybody. Good luck, as our Jules, who's often in the comments, says. And I'm not going to make a great deal about it because why? Why? Labour made much of Rachel Reeves being the first female chancellor, but Labour is so obsessed with identity to the point that it's mostly all mouth and no trousers. Quite literally, Labour has never had a female leader. Never. No matter what they say about Tories, it was the Conservatives who had the first female prime minister. In fact, 3 female prime ministers, Thatcher, May, Truss, while Labour hasn't had one female leader ever. Typical lefties, all mouth, all mouth. Sick of it, people. Sick of it. Let's have a look at your comments. What's going on? My husband's a banker and he banks all day. What's that, KB? Look at the 666 going through the noughts. What's that? Oh, that's curious. I see what you mean on the screen. I got you. Yeah. All trousers and no mouth. Says Eric. Right. I don't put my trust in those people. No, But they allegedly have a homosexual leader now. Allegedly. But you're talking about Kemi, right? She's married. Although, obviously, as we know, many people can get married. Usually it's men, isn't it? Usually it's men with their beards. So I don't know anything about that. But we are the 666, says Randy. Oh, I don't know about that, Randy. Right. What shall we move on to? What shall we move on to? People, did anybody see what happened in Cowgate in Edinburgh at the weekend? I'm still reeling from it. I fell across the video by accident. It's described as a fatal road crash in Cowgate, Edinburgh. A 74-year-old man died, we're told, apparently after being struck by a single-decker bus in the Cowgate area of Edinburgh. Officers were called to the incident around 7:25 p.m. on Saturday. And the video I saw, people thought it was a Halloween prank. There was a head in the road. Somebody picked up the head and realized it was real. Shocking. Shocking stuff. But I'm really struggling to believe what they are officially telling us. Really struggling to believe it. And bear in mind that the 1st and 2nd on the calendar is often seen as either one of them as the Day of the Dead. And I'm just horrified by that. And I'm horrified by his poor family having to see that video and having to see what's online. Police Scotland said anyone with information is asked to call the police via 101. Please quote incident number 3395 of Saturday, 2nd of November, 2024. The Chief Inspector, Tricia Clark, said we are aware of videos and images circulating on social media which are causing distress to the deceased family and those viewing them inadvertently. Yes, I was inadvertent. We would ask members of the public not to share them out of respect for his family and to report them to the relevant social media platform to prevent further circulation. There has been a lot of speculation, and I would like to reassure the local community that this was an isolated incident and there is no risk to the wider public. But as Zoe and Craig of Only Cans pointed out to me, and they live in Edinburgh, there was another crash in Cowgate that hit the headlines on exactly the same day a year ago. 2 children among 5 in hospital after car hit pedestrians and taxis. And I do find dates and coincidences like that curious. I do. There were 4 casualties. 50-year-old man, the driver of a taxi, was taken to hospital after the same car struck his vehicle while he was stationary. Officers confirmed a 53-year-old man, the driver of a Volkswagen, was arrested at the scene. This was a year ago to the day when this horrific situation happened. And social media can be just horrible when you just innocently log on, and suddenly you are presented with these horrendous images. And yesterday I saw so many, including a little puppy. Oh, I can't even tell you. It's horrible. Crazy Bunny, who is from Edinburgh and is our Zoe, said Edinburgh is so dark. Kat said there are no coincidences. Christine said horrific and also weird. And Ian quite rightly points out that the occult, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that, Ian. It's one of those words, but basically the occult people know their dates. Yes, exactly. Marshall is talking about the Duchy of Cornwall. She says it's shambles. His tenants are struggling. Lots of homelessness in Cornwall. St Austell a mess and struggling, and so on. Huge rent increases on the Duchy. Yep. And Kat said, believes there's agent provocateurs at work. Catherine says Edinburgh, my home city, is steeped in darkness. And yeah, horrible. It's absolutely horrible. It was horrible to see. Rest in peace. Rest in peace. And I'm really sorry to the family and loved ones who not only have to endure what has happened to their loved one, but also now know that there's a video online that has been viewed probably millions of times. Absolutely awful. And I'm not convinced by the story we're being told. I'm not. And that's not because I'm a conspiracy theorist, because I have so many years of being lied to. So there you go. Right. Desensitizing us all, Marcus. And I think there's some truth in that. Absolutely. Absolutely disgusting. Don't forget, of course, tomorrow, the presidential race. Some of our viewers couldn't give 2 figs about it, but I cover it because we live in a globalist world. And so whatever is going on in the US will impact us. Usually our money as they embroil us in yet more proxy wars like they have with the Ukraine. And has anybody seen all of the celebrity endorsements for Harris? I mean, I know they're being paid. 50 Cent actually said, I think it was, if I get the amount right, I've got a funny feeling that he said that he was offered millions, and it might have been $3 million by Donald Trump to endorse him. That's what 50 Cent said. But there are so many celebrity endorsements for Harris. Some of them are gruesome. Harrison Ford seems to think that voting for Harris is good for free speech. Where did he get this idea from? Whatever people think about Trump, and I know that we have many mixed views on this show, everyone knows he's more of a free speech advocate than Harris is. Then did anybody see Cardi B? Oh, showing us that unless it's a topic that involves debasing herself or anybody else, she is literally speechless, right? They had to bring her mobile phone up to the podium while she was on stage so she could read from it. She said she was nervous, which presumably is the new word for dumb. So the polls keep switching. The latest poll I was looking at was 53.9% for Trump and 46.2% for Harris, but who knows? Greg said Beyonce was allegedly paid $3 million for a 4-minute speech. People were upset as they were expecting her to sing at the rally. And Cardi B was unbelievably cringeworthy, Lulu. I found it unbearable. Synchronized Soul said, no lies, that Cowgate stuff threw me for 24 hours. Honestly, it was hideous. What's that, Buzzacino? Dems are saying they will use Amendment 14 to disqualify Trump. Well, lots of people are saying, regardless of whether Trump wins or not, he won't. Right? Yeah. Or did he guess list attention? I mean, there is some truth in this. There is an awful lot of people who attended Diddy parties who appear to be asking the Americans to vote for Harris, and that there is truth in that. I mean, that is absolutely the reality. I saw a video of those two shaking hand like they were old buddies. I mean, bear in mind that they both essentially agree on some of the most egregious issues, including the Middle East. Great verse, Buzzacino. Great verse. Right. Thank you, Curly Crew. Sending me love. I appreciate that. Thank you. Am I going somewhere? Controlled demolition. Pauline. Draining down our funds in any which way they can. Controlled demolition. Well, Pauline, that could literally apply to almost anything that we've been talking about today, including, you're absolutely right, in America, probably using your money in order to be able to bring on, I don't know, Cardi B and whoever. The Harrison Ford video, though, was downright cringy. I mean, I would actually trust free speech more in the hands of a Donald Trump than a Harris. I mean, I would. Anyway, where are we? The Queen. Oh, what's this? Names associated with Diddy are all standing up for Harris. I mean, there are a lot. There are an awful lot. J-Lo. Did anybody see that performative junk from J-Lo? J-Lo, who was obviously Diddy's girlfriend for a substantial period of time, she's had an awful lot to say, hasn't she, about Trump, but absolutely nothing about Diddy. I want to move on to Diddy next. I've been going through my files, people. Been going through my files. Let me bring this up. So yeah. Any idea who you think is going to win this presidential election? Any idea? Sasha thinks Cardi B is literally devil girl. She's horrible. I love you too, Marie. Halo wants to know, am I weird for not disliking Trump? Who knows anymore? I mean, you've got to bear in mind that the one thing, I mean, I definitely don't agree with lots of what he says, but I also agree with some of what he says, which is kind of the power of politicians, because you know what I was talking about with like Kemi Badenoch as one example. But the one thing I do know unquestionably about Trump is that he doesn't have legacy media on his side, whereas Harris does. They actually had Harris on Saturday Night Live on Saturday. And if they really should have considered having both of them, in all fairness. But, you know, almost all of the major channels in America seem to be supporting Harris. And so those things are curious to me about why there is so much. Jan is fed up. Jan is fed up with all this election trickery. It's time they stopped all these fake votes. And I think this is great. Absolutely. Rediscover. Oh, is that? Oh, Rare Disco Dancer. I'm proud to be completely oblivious to who and what Cardi B is. Cardi B is a former stripper. And the problem is, there's a lot of females now who have entered hip hop. And I speak as somebody who was there at the start of hip hop and catalogued it as a hip hop journalist and a hip hop editor. Cardi B is part of this kind of retinue of new female rappers who were formerly strippers, and they're really they debase the art, actually, and all they really can do is kind of shake their tush. And I find her repugnant. Yes, I do. Find her repugnant. Let's talk, if possible, seeing beyond that is what the real things are happening, says Randy. Chris's concern is going to be, whoever wins, we lose. And that's probably one of the most profound statements, actually. Right. And what's this? Free Steamer 34 says this would be the biggest rigged election to get her in. Then civil unrest comes next. Remember that. WAP. Absolutely disgusting. And you saw children performing to it. And honestly, some of the biggest media hookers were in it. Kylie Jenner, Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B. Absolutely abhorrent. Yes, we're glamorizing the objectification of women again. We've come full circle. Yes, well, I don't know what to say to that. Dr. Moorhen said there is nothing weird about President Donald J. Trump, and we won't lose. I see. Ian Briggs is not sure, saying the secret government will stay in power. Yeah, deep state, right? Whichever one, deep state. That's true, Sasha. Absolutely disgusting. Cardi B was laughing about her being involved in drugging men and then stealing their money. These people are horrible. Horrible. Yeah, horrible people. Let me talk you through my Puffy story, right? I mean, I'm not going to go into detail because it is on YouTube, but I've been kind of forced to remember this again. Let me just find the details, right? So basically, at the weekend, this, by the way, was given to me by Puffy. This was Mary J. Blige, What's the 411, on Uptown Records. And what's interesting, I need my magnifying glass because even my glasses aren't going to help me here, is Mary J. Blige, who is now seemed to be apparently distancing herself from Puffy. Obviously, Puff Daddy is currently detained and awaiting his trial in May next year. Charges of drugging, trafficking, sexual exploitation, you name it. Hundreds of civil claims now coming forward. Big names involved with his parties, all of that sort of stuff. But P. Diddy was absolutely the man behind Mary J. Blige. And let me just read you this. This was a credit that Mary J. Blige gave to him, saying, thanks to Sean Puffy Combs for going through hell and all these sleepless days and nights with me to finish this album. Thanks to Andre Harrell for having so much faith in me when no one else did. Thank you. And I've interviewed both Andre Harrell and Puffy. Andre's no longer here with us. And Puffy did actually give me this CD. And so I went through some of my files because I'd interviewed him several times. I've interviewed all of them. Mary J. Blige, Diddy, Biggie, Andre Harrell, because my speciality was black music and primarily hip hop. I have a magnifying glass. Your mum has a magnifying glass, as she soul sound. But I found this diary, 1996. And it's so interesting to actually go back because I kept quite extensive records. And actually, on Monday, July the 29th, was that when the Southport killing was this year? But on Monday, July the 29th, 1996, I have here Sean Puffy Combs interview, Bad Boy New York at midday. Kevin from Arista is sorting out the cabs, picking me up at Paramount because I was at Paramount Hotel. And so I kind of looked through this and I realized that 2 weeks before, I had been in Rotterdam with the Notorious Big, with Junior Mafia, with Coolio, with Total, on the road with them. And then what happened was I got on so well with Biggie that the people at Arista said, oh, would you like to go and do a piece about Bad Boy? And, go to New York, you can have full access to Puffy, which I did. But here's why I was kind of forced to remember all this, right? I don't know if I've actually, have I? Oh, I have. Let me bring this. I've talked about this before, right? You can see this is Puffy. And Mark Devlin mentioned this the other day, that the people who have been around a long time and actually knew Puffy from a long time, they call him Puffy. We don't call him Diddy and we don't call him Love. And he only changed his name from Puffy because he knew what it actually meant and he wanted to get away from it. And he changed his name from Diddy to Love because he wanted to get away from it, because that's the kind of person he is. P. Diddy the silencer. Yes, I'm going to cover Duffy in future weeks, Kath. Yes, I am. But so what was interesting was I was sent to New York and to interview him, and I arrived at the Bad Boy offices and they said to me, oh, he's not here. He's at his flat. And he said, you can go into his office, have a look around, kind of get some background to your story about his office. And I noted things like images of his dad and his mum and lots of really proactive messages, like, you know, things like if you sleep, you lose and all that sort of stuff. Excuse me, I just wiped my mouth. But I was commissioned to write it for Arena magazine. My editor, Tim Nicholson, had commissioned me to write it. And I came back from New York only to discover that my editor had thrown himself off a cliff in Brighton and killed himself. And the magazine was blamed for it. So I'd literally come back. I'd been sent off by Tim to do this piece. And I came back to discover that he'd killed himself. It was really shocking, quite shocking time. But what was interesting was Puffy. When I interviewed Puffy, I went to his home and he was perfectly nice with me, perfectly polite. None of the things that we've heard about him, but why should he be? I'm a journalist. He knew not to mess with me. I'm also very strong and I carry with me a kind of don't mess with me attitude a lot of the time. And I certainly did as a music journalist, where I was in the minority, being both female and white. And I had this kind of don't F with me attitude a lot of the time. And I probably did with him as well. But he had his hand bandaged up, and our wonderful Zoe found the video where he was talking about it. And I've talked about this previously, and I said he had his hand bandaged up, and he told me that what had happened was that he'd shattered a glass in his hand and it had severed arteries. But actually there's this video with Gene Deal, who was a former bodyguard, who's actually telling us that it was Kim Porter, who is now dead, the mother to 3 of his children, who did it, who did this to him, fighting back because he was trying to involve her in various things. And I looked at the date and the timeline. That's why I got to all of this, the diary and everything. And this was when he was with Kim Porter. So almost certainly when he was telling me that his hand was bandaged because a glass had kind of spontaneously busted in his hand, actually it was because his the mother of his children had fought back and defended herself. So thank you, Zoe, for solving a 2-decade plus mystery for me, because I never believed that, what he told me. I never believed it. But that story from Gene Deal completely ties in with the timeline of when I went to him. Yes. Yes, Angie, I do know what happens to prisoners accused of anything with children. And obviously, we are now hearing allegations and accusations that children were involved and were abused. His right hand a bit worn out there, says Randy, just a smidge. Yep, so-called celebrities are being thrown under the bus. Yes, Teresa, it's fascinating. And I feel in many respects really blessed to kind of have an understanding about this sort of, history that's taking place now, which is not what a lot of them can be said for a lot of the people. And I want to talk about these internet gossips because I think they're a real problem, right? And I'm talking about former artists, former pop stars who suddenly claim to know everything, right? They suddenly claim to know everything, or former cops who claim to suddenly know everything. And if there are people on the circuit talking about everything from Diddy to Jill Dando and Madeleine McCann, and I haven't invited them on here, that's for a reason. I've been doing this for a long time, right? I know when people are grafters and I know when people are grifters. And one of the biggest names in recent years to come out and say things is Jaguar Wright. But she's a professional gossip. She's an angry and very bitter woman who didn't succeed in the music industry. And now she claims to know personal first-hand stories about some of the biggest names in American music, including Beyonce, including Diddy, including Jay-Z. But when are people going to start asking her about her own shady self, right? She's actually poisonous. She's unwell. She needs help. She's grieving. Her son was murdered 6 years ago, but lots of people are coming out and saying how dangerous and how poisonous she is. And the thing is that I have a lot of problems with these kind of clickbait internet gossips because they muddy the waters. There is a great deal of abuse that has taken place in the entertainment industry, in the music industry. But some of these stories that people like Jaguar Wright comes out with, as one example, Orlando Brown is another, a deeply disturbed individual. These people are disturbed. And I think there comes a point when we have to ask whether these podcasters are exploiting these individuals. The thing about Jaguar Wright is she will have like a percentage of truths in what she's saying, but there's a whole lot of stuff that she has no clue about, and yet she's pontificating about. And I think it's wrong. She is definitely grieving and venting, Curly Crew. I agree. And I feel sorry for her. And I think that these podcasters have to stop platforming her at this moment in time because she is coming out with some stuff. And that also includes, she's not alone. She is far from alone. There's several ex-cops on the circuit and they claim to know everything about everything. And in reality, they know very little about, they didn't even know a great deal about the work when they were doing it. And I saw this comment on a YouTube to do with Jaguar Wright, and I think it's spot on. And that is, one day we will collectively have a conversation about these internet interviews where former stars who are clearly dealing with mental issues are exploited for content. Whether she's telling the truth or not, these interview shows are just using her for clickbait. And that is the reality. These people are exploiting a grieving mother who is angry. She's angry that she didn't succeed. That's the reality. And even her own son has done an interview with Tasha K in which he talks about her being a narcissist, a terrible mother, where they were constantly evicted, and where, you know, the least these podcasters could do is say, but, you know, Jacquelyn, which is her real name, Jacquelyn, what about your own history? Why do you feel the need to say all these things about people? Because she started on people like 50 Cent. And I think somebody like 50 Cent, I mean, I've never heard anything about 50 Cent, not anything like that to do with like trafficking or anything like that. Never. But I could be wrong. I have watched the videos by Ali Carter, Robert. Now, Ali has an authenticity about her, you see, and I feel it. Yeah. What's that? Diddy in 2026 makes another hit record about innocent criminals in the system. Good point. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I think Ali Carter is interesting, very interesting. Laurie Maddox, wasn't Laurie Maddox like the child girlfriend of somebody? I think it's in one of my videos. Who was that? Who was Laurie Maddox's boyfriend? Yes, Curly Crew, I agree. Yes, I absolutely agree. Now, I think this is absolutely right. I do feel for Orlando. This childhood rise to fame has definitely had an impact on his mental health. Absolutely. Sasha does believe Jaguar Wright, but Sasha, I saw as one example somebody say to Jaguar Wright about how Corey Gamble, Kris Jenner's so-called boyfriend, was at the deathbed of Kim Porter, and she was like, yeah, but I'll tell you what else, because she doesn't know about that, right? So she's one of those people who's read an awful lot on the internet. And honestly, I have interviewed so many people like Jaguar Wright. I have. And my experience is absolutely telling me that a percentage of what she's saying is true, but a huge percentage of it isn't. And it's about attention. It's because she's angry. She hates all these people. She hates Jay-Z. She hates Beyonce. And a lot of it is because she just hasn't succeeded. There is a bitterness attached to it. So I am not for internet gossips and clickbait material. I'm not. I think it's dangerous and I think it muddies the water. And I think that people like Orlando Brown, Jaguar Wright are being exploited. And by the way, Gene Deal coming out and saying all this stuff, former bodyguard of Puffy, weren't you an enabler? I mean, weren't a lot of these people who are now speaking up, weren't they enabling? But now suddenly they're speaking out. So I do have a problem with all of this. David Bowie. No, Laurie Maddox, was that David Bowie's 16-year-old girlfriend? Was it? Short Order Cook is asking me a question. Let's see. Do you think much of this has been the distractive hype before the election? Possibly. I mean, possibly. Anything's possible. KB said it's not the real Diddy that's in jail. How do we know that, though? Simon, I don't know if he was. Amy, yes, Jaguar has been saying things for a while, but have you also seen the videos of her own son, what he has to say about her? Because that's valid as well. And his mannerism is almost identical to her, almost identical. So yes, I have a problem. I do have a problem with it. As I say, I do believe a percentage of what these people are saying is accurate, but I don't believe it all. And honestly, I think that we have to help people with mental and emotional issues and not necessarily give them a platform. We have to help them. We have to help them. So again, always you can disagree with me. That's why I'm reading out comments that disagree with me, because that's what it's like around here. Because I actually do believe in freedom of speech, oddly enough. I do. I've got Peter's geoengineering image lined up. Let me bring that on. Look at that. Peter says, more photos from Lincolnshire, 27th of October, 2024. This time, not directly in front of the sun. I have solar panels and usually only have to top up from the grid during the winter months. During the whole of 2023, I used 19 kilowatts from the grid, while so far in 2024, I've used 1,909 kilowatts and projected for the entire year around 2,700 kilowatts, which is almost double. This is a clear indication of how much less sunshine there has been here. I also grow my own potatoes and the yield is about half of the previous year, with most of the crop ending very early. I think Peter makes a very, very good point. A very good point. And I'd like to, I also, which I haven't queued up, which is a pain in the butt, I had several other geo images, including from Mrs. Pirate, who's often in our comments. So I'm sorry, I'll have to queue those up for Friday. Please forgive me. Carl sent an interesting email. Does this resonate with any of you out there? It's to do with apps. Right. Let me read some of this for you. I think he makes an important point. Carl said, hello, Sonia. May or may not be worth keeping on your radar, but I have noticed another concerning trend recently. There seems to be a huge effort to push all internet related activity onto apps. An example being the way in which people now share information. As you will know from my many annoying emails, they're not annoying, Carl. The easiest way for me to share videos until recently was to copy a link and email it. That's true. The issue with forcing all such activity onto an app going forward is that all such apps, and just call me Nostradamus here, will be inextricably linked to your personal device, and therefore at some point any kind of digital ID that may eventually be introduced. In this way, an app becomes a very personal thing to the user, and one might imagine much easier to oversee and monitor as a result. Don't get me wrong, Carl said. I'm aware that all things are capable of being monitored online, but forcing communication onto an app means you are no longer afforded the protections that a platform like DuckDuckGo may have provided in terms of privacy, and all your activity will be routed via the likes of Microsoft. Weirdos like me have been able to circumvent this until now. I'm sure you can appreciate the potential pitfalls of having all communication overseen by a corporation that has everything to do with the likes of Mr. Gates. I do. Anybody else notice that? I've noticed that, the push to get us to app up. I've noticed that. And Carl said he's confident that I will see his point. I do absolutely. And I wonder if anybody else has noticed that. I wonder. Yes, P. Diddy is apparently spotted with Elvis in South America. I got you. Bowie and Jimmy Page, the Blue Nomad. Right, got you. Laurie Maddox. Yes, Ashley, she's abused too, 100%. But that's what I'm saying. I think she's also being exploited. When somebody is grieving that much and they're just spewing it out and just being put, and they're being paid large amounts of money. Tasha K talked about how Orlando Brown had just been given 10K by a podcast to come on and spew stuff, right? These are not reliable sources, not reliable. Anyway, just going back to what Carl says, I agree with him. I think everything is being encouraged very, very much for us to app up. Yes. And thank you, Claire, for your brilliant email. And Claire talks about pretty much everything that I've been talking about recently, whether it's to do with the Great Replacement or Tommy Robinson, or the Menendez brothers or Lucy Letby. But Claire poses a really important point at the end of her email. And I think this is important. She says, so what do we do, Sonia? What do we do? Knowledge is only power if we use it. We can't just continue to spend all our time sharing knowledge of the corrupt and awful system we are voluntarily enslaved to if we don't have a plan to take our country back. And it's the same for every other country. Some countries only have civil law and not natural law like us, and we don't realize how powerful we are. What do we do? What's the point of knowing the agendas if we just sit back and do nothing? We might as well join the others and live in ignorant bliss until we find ourselves in the Hunger Games 15-minute cities in life. We might as well enjoy the ride than be fearful every day. And I do take Claire's point, and that's why my job is to raise awareness, right? But I also will take that elsewhere. But I just want to say that I take it so seriously what you said, Claire. If you remember, we had Chris Coverdale on the other week, and he was talking about the lawful tax rebellion movement. And I introduced somebody I trust implicitly to Chris, who I believe can get an initiative of this kind, a fight back off the ground. And they're having their second meeting today, Claire. So things are happening behind the scenes. And can I just say, some people contacted me offering help to this initiative. If you still wish to offer help, particularly in an admin secretarial type role, please contact me so I can put you in contact with those organizing this. Thank you very, very much. I very much appreciate it. So Claire, I completely take your point. It is frustrating. We talk about how these awful things are happening, but what are we ultimately going to do about them? And we have to do something. We have to do something. And so to this end, I am doing the very best I can. And I will certainly get involved in that initiative because I trust the people who are involved in it. Can I just remind everybody that our Shin has a picky and poor video online. We will put a link in the description. This is episode 4, how to juice green. Healthy stuff. How to juice green. Good, healthy stuff. We like to hear that. Yes, picky and poor. Please go and subscribe to them. And what else do I want to tell you? What else do I want to tell you? I think, yeah, I do want to comment on this, even though it's 11:10. I'm going to make it quick, though. And that is, Matt had contacted me. Matt wrote in after noticing disturbing advertising on the London Underground that 5G is coming. And I don't know if you can see this. This is one of the ads. It's very small. Sorry about that. And Matt said, have you seen the new 5G is coming to the tube posters that have recently appeared all over the London Underground, endorsed by the mayor, of course, mayor being Sadiq Khan. Wish I could attach one here, but I forgot to take a photo and can't find it online. I'm not sure if this is one of them. It could hardly be more dystopian, says Matt. It's dark, forbidding, and features an unhealthy, unhappy-looking, zombie-like young woman. Oh, no, this isn't the one. Staring down at her phone in half light. Not exactly a bright new dawn. It could hardly... I really recommend you check it out, says Matt. So, Matt, I did check it out, and I actually discovered that in some parts of London, on the tube, people can now use not just can use ease 4G and 5G on the mobile network. And I have deep concerns about 5G, as people know. I did an extensive interview recently with 2 people who know far more about 5G than I do, but they left me very, very convinced, certainly with the bank of evidence that they came forth with. And in the West End, as one example, so what they decided, EE has been given the contract to deliver 4G and 5G at Euston, Goodge Street, Chancery Lane, Bank, at Oxford Circus, Tottenham Court Road, all the West End hubs. This is everywhere now. This is going everywhere. It's going to be on the Central Line, Northern Line, all throughout. I looked into it, and there were people who have very deep concerns about the impact on people. And the thing is that what happens is it immediately connects you. If your mobile is on, it will immediately connect you for some people, which is pretty troubling. So it is now all 8 stations on the Elizabeth line are currently 4G. And what they will be, let's see what we've got here. All 8 stations on the line that are underground have a 4G mobile signal, which is Woolwich, Whitechapel, Canary Wharf, Liverpool Street, Farringdon, Tottenham Court Road, Bond Street and Paddington. And tunnel sections between Royal Oak and Whitechapel and Custom House to Woolwich and Plumstead Portal have 5G mobile coverage. So they haven't yet been able to convert the entire tube system to 5G, but it's only a matter of time. The Northern Line is from Archway to Leicester Square. Piccadilly Line is Leicester Square, Piccadilly Circus, Covent Garden, Russell Square stations. This is spreading everywhere. Matt, I actually have a mobile coverage tube map, right? And at the moment, what Transport for London are saying, if your station does not have mobile connection, you can connect to public Wi-Fi. This is not reassuring anybody, is it? Not reassuring anybody at all. What are your thoughts, people? What's that? Look at that pic. It's clearly not the same guy. What are you talking about? Who's he talking about? KB, who are you talking about? What same guy? What am I missing? Yeah, BT are now in partnership. Got you. Oh, KB is not impressed with 5G. I would like to see that, Sonia. What would you like to see? The map, Brett. I've got it on my Word document, but I haven't got it loaded. I could show you that on Friday. I see. P. Diddy. Right. Got you. What's that? I'm missing things here. Let me catch up. Is that right? Health Freedom. Sadiq Khan is going to set up solar panels in Herts, Essex and Bucks. Right. For the tube system. London is England as Texas is America. Got you. KB says the guy arrested wasn't Diddy. I mean, I know this is a story that frequently people often say, it's not him, it's not him. And it's like, I'm going to go along with it being him for now, right? Because I think that there's a danger in constantly saying it's not him, right? Because we never actually drill down to dealing with the issue, right? So I'm going to go along with it for now and say it is him. That's what I'm going to do. And can I just say, talking of troubling underground ads, by the way, Matt, thank you for raising that up. I was not aware that 5G was on the tube, Matt. I was not aware, and I'm scared about it. It's horrible, because there are very serious and significant problems with 5G. And just talking about troubling underground ads, by the way, Wahid sent me this. Several tube stations are actually displaying paid posters with the ISIS hand image. Look at this. Wahed, join the money revolution. And the one on the other side is, of course, the ISIS imagery. These ads are approved by Sadiq Khan. And I think that Wahid has every right to be concerned. Says, incredibly, they were bold enough to display the subject in the typical black top, display fire images, Western currencies burning, perhaps in lieu of burning Western flags. And Wahid said, please investigate and expose these offensive and sinister posters from the public realm. And Wahid quite rightly says this appears to be terror promoting, even if subtle and subliminal, has no place in the UK and more so in such a public space. It is upsetting and threatening for the millions of passers-by on the tube. I agree with you, Wahid. I absolutely agree with you. And this particular poster that Wahid sent in, it was displayed in several stations. This particular one was in Holborn Station. And I'm left in no doubt whatsoever that that is some ISIS propaganda right there. Yes, Teresa, you see it, don't you? You see it. Yes. Martin thinks we'll soon need an app to cross the road. I get you. Yes, Wizard is not a fan of Islam, should I point out? Not a fan at all. But I think Wahid has an absolute point there. It seems absolutely apparent to me that that is what is going on here. And thank you for pointing that out to me, Wahid. I truly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. And keep on sending me the stuff, people, lovely people, because I do not have eyes and ears everywhere as much as I may like to. I don't. Now, going to draw to a close. 11:17. We managed to get past 11:11. Yes, Peter. Fair point. Yes, creation of the US-UK government. Have you looked into Levi Davis' case? Oh, Sasha. Yes, I have. I was going to cover Levi today. There isn't a great deal to cover, actually, to be fair. But let me just quickly read that because that was Hazel. That was Hazel. Actually, people, I don't know if I can. I'm so sorry, Hazel. I did bump this from because I am actually still waiting. I've got a note here saying waiting response. So I've sent not information. I sent a request to the police asking what's going on. So it's waiting for response. So Sasha, yes, that will have to wait till Friday. Actually, forgive me, please forgive me. And can I just say, I think a lot of our viewers are going to resonate with this. A lot of them. This is from Jeremy. Hi, Sonia and the whole Wake Up crew. All my life, I have been criticized as being oversensitive. I don't think I am. I believe myself to be compassionate and empathetic, but not to the point that I can't see clearly. I always feel that when people say I'm too sensitive, it's an attack on me, as if I am an emotional basket case. You are sensitive, Sonia. How do you hack some of the awful information you deal with? And do people accuse you of being oversensitive? Love, Jeremy. Well, yes, people do often accuse me of being oversensitive. In answer to how do I hack some of the awful stuff that I see, I have learnt to keep a professional distance to a lot of it. There was a period of time when I used to take a lot of first party accounts of children abused, adult survivors. That was very difficult for me. I found that really, really difficult. That is so dark. It's horrible. So I've learned to keep a professional distance in answer to that, Jeremy. But first of all, I looked into this, right? And so we are known as HSPs, highly sensitive people. And it's both a blessing and a curse in my experience. Sometimes it can feel as if the world is on your shoulders. Sometimes you can feel others' pain with such sharpness, such clarity, and such precision. It can almost feel like it's your own, but there is actually so much more to it than that. And that is why I'm here to tell you that being sensitive comes with its ups and downs, but on balance, if I had a choice, I would choose to be this way, Jeremy. Yes, I would. And the thing is, HSP is not an actual official diagnosis as such. It's considered a personality trait of a temperamental disposition. It does offer both benefits and challenges. And yes, curly crew, I get that. I think we're gonna use that one. Absolutely there. You're not alone. And we're not oversensitive. We're just observant and empathetic. Yes, hypersensitive is a superpower, says Sasha. Yes, KB, I get that about 5G. Excellent point. Yes, I do. It is a blessing and a curse, Crone. It absolutely is. So let's work through it and let's make it into more of a blessing, shall we? First of all, what is a HSP? A highly sensitive person. A highly sensitive person is someone who's more aware of social stimuli, such as people's voices, such as facial expressions, such as body language. And they may be particularly empathetic, and they also may be prone to overstimulation. Some people who are oversensitive may also have been diagnosed with things like ADHD as one example. And I mean, the thing is that if you have what's known as sensory processing sensitivity, this will make you highly sensitive to your environment and what's going on. Like, I know people, and I'm the same, right? I can walk into a room and I can know, providing I know the room, of course, I can tell you immediately what's been moved, what's been changed, right? And I pick up from people. I pick up what people are feeling even without them opening their mouths. If they're in my company, I can tell you what's going on in their heart. I just can. And I'm not usually wrong about that. And I think that's a good thing. But obviously, of course, it can sometimes mean that you carry the world on your shoulders, which can be very, very painful. And some of the characteristics of being an HSP, right, it's more than just being sensitive to stimuli, right? You can process your environmental stimuli more deeply than other people. You can also be more emotionally reactive to other people's behavior. You can be more physiologically reactive to other people's behavior. So, when somebody is like lying to you, as one example, you may get a tell. I know when people are lying to me, I get hairs stand up on the back of my neck, all that kind of stuff, right? I generally know when people are lying to me. Not always, but sometimes. You can also, being an HSP, you can have stronger emotional responses to situations. So, the people who are out there on social media and they're like amplifying, they're not just doing it for the good of their health. They're often doing it because they cannot live with what's going on in their mind and they need to get it out there somehow. And also, being an HSP also can often mean that you have a low pain threshold. You can have a low tolerance to high levels of sensory input. So, like, music can be too loud for you, talking on TV or radio can be too loud for you, anything like that. You can notice the nuances in what people are saying far quicker and far faster. And I love that sort of stuff, frankly. And that's interesting. Oh, what's that? Oh God, what's that? I didn't mean to put that on the screen, Eric. I don't know how that happened. HSP is a survival skill, says Lads. Eric, I have no idea what you were saying that in relation to. Sorry, everybody. And also, being a highly sensitive person can be stressful. Right, Jeremy, I'm here to tell you it can be stressful. It can cause anxiety and it can create relationship challenges, especially if you're with somebody who isn't sensitive, right? But there are many benefits to it, many benefits to it. And yeah, what's that? My parrot are both saying, yeah, right now. Randy, we loved your comment last week, by the way, to, oh, what was her name? Who was on with me last week? God. How could I suddenly have forgotten her name? Brilliant, hilarious. She used to work with Tommy Robinson. Forgive me. But there was a bit where you asked if she was single. Paranoid. What's that? HSP equals deep feelings. Yes, indeed. Morning, beats and tapes. Morning, Julie. I'm constantly asking people to speak quiet, says Katie. Oh, are you, Katie? That's curious. Marie, the NHS asked you if your sex was assigned at birth. How ridiculous. Ian says HSPs are best fun of all. Humor is their weapon. I use humor a lot. I use it a lot. Oh, yes, I do. So what are the signs of HSP? Well, low threshold for sensory awareness, overstimulation. Your personality and your temperament can be impacted, as we've said. And there's an existing question which they're actually trying to tackle in science and in academia, and that is whether people are now more sensitive than they were in the past. Because obviously we have the internet, we have popular media, and often focuses on claims that people are more sensitive than they were in the past. But there isn't any great literature to suggest that is the case. It's just that we have more platforms and more ways of expressing how we feel, so it may appear. And here's a completely different take on it. Yes, Lucy Brown. Lovely Lucy Brown. That's right. Sorry, Lucy. Do you know, the thing is, I can probably remember a million things about lovely Lucy Brown. And I'm like that. I remember the things about people, their character, who they are, but I don't always remember names. That's just who I am. Is empathy also on the rise? Buzzacino wants to know. Well, that's interesting again. Is it? Thank you so much for all your kindness. High five to all sensitive people, says Marlena. Thank you. We really appreciate that. We really appreciate that very much. I love you too, Randy, and Crazy Bunny, and Healing the Silence, and all of you. We're family. We're family round here. Yes, we are. And what's that? HSPs end up attracting narcissists, and that's another negative. That is so true. Spot on. But I personally, like I say, in the round, even the difficulties sometimes that being highly sensitive can bring with it, I would rather be like this than be like a rock. You know, those people who you share your heart with, and they're just like, you know, they're not giving up anything. No, not empathy, no sympathy, nothing. They're just like that. And I think a lot of them probably work in human resources. Anyway, I think on balance, as I say, there are more benefits to being highly sensitive than not. And I believe that sensitivity is your friend, not your enemy. There are also, being highly sensitive endows people with some incredible social skills. Incredibly, because HSPs tend to notice things that others do not. You know, we pick up on body language, other subtle cues of what people are going through. Sometimes not everybody feels that they can just blurt out how they feel, and they can keep it close to themselves, but HSPs will pick it up and can really help other people to process what they're feeling. So like I say, on balance, Jeremy, I'd rather be like this, even though sometimes the world can be really painful. Like when I saw those images from Cowgate, right, that really like upset me so much. Like all day yesterday, it just kept coming back to me. I could not get rid of it. Sensitive keeps you safe. I hear you, Kath. I hear you loud and clear. And, you know, so the bottom line is this, that be proud of who you are. It is absolutely wonderful, really. And there's nothing wrong, Jeremy, in being able to pick up on these things. And when people say you're oversensitive, maybe they're undersensitive. Maybe that is the problem. And I haven't got a quote to end on today, other than just to say that I try and be as sensitive as humanly possible to all the people that come into contact with me. And I don't always succeed at that. Sometimes I also get it wrong. So if you've somebody who I have not been as sensitive as I should have been with you, I ask for your forgiveness. I always do try, but sometimes the sheer volume of correspondence that comes my way doesn't enable me to read in minute detail when people send me volumes and volumes of their life story. And again, that is no smear or mark on you. I just want you to know that I do appreciate you getting in touch, and I'm sorry that I'm not able to literally read everything that is sent to me. Some people send me manuscripts, and that must feel awful to them. They've blurted out how they're feeling, and I'm simply not able to go through it. So I just want you to know that it isn't you. It's not personal to you. It's me. It's me. It's my job. It's how much work I have. And I try and spread that as fairly as possible. But I want you to know that you count, that you matter, and being sensitive is a wonderful thing. And so there you go. We are all wounded, Randy. We are. Lindley is, why won't your computer let me send you dollars? Never mind. It's fine. No problem. No problem at all. Thank you all. Thank you all. Sensitive is the superpower. I'm going to put this up. Where is it? Sensitive is the superpower to not only see things, but to see through things. I think that's a beautiful quote. That's the quote we're going to end on. Listen, I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our wonderful guests. Yeah, it's 11:30 because I'm mad like that. I'm wild like that. I so greatly appreciate everybody who contributes to this show. I will see you on Friday. Keep in touch. Have a fantastic week and take excellent care of yourself. And of course, as ever, thank you to our two wonderful mods for keeping us all in check today. Take good care of yourself. Have a great week. Love to you all.